Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is, as the members have been around a little while, Mr. Holt, Mr. Rain, as y'all know, and Mr. Burkholz, you have learned as well, the county board of zoning appeals, like the planning commission, is required to do 4 hours of annual training every year. What we would typically do is try to do study sessions and that kind of thing prior to a meeting, spend an hour talking about something that counts. It counts for your training. It's kind of 2 birds with 1 stone. Sometimes we'll do training that's kind of relevant to things that are on the agenda. We'll also, when we have new board members coming on and that kind of thing, we'll talk about things that are, roles and responsibilities of the board and that kind of thing. The board of zoning appeals is a very unique animal, I think, and I think the members that have sat on here for a while would agree. It's probably one of the more challenging boards that's out there. One of the most thankless, as I say, it's the most thankless board. And there's a lot of boards and committees in county government. City government, I think, certainly is, but in county government, it's up there in the top 5 or 10 anyway, I guess. But it's a thankless board that, you don't ever get to make easy decisions, and there's almost no way sometimes to make a decision without making somebody mad or somebody's feelings or doing something that costs somebody something that they're wanting to get done on their own property a lot of time. But that's the reason we have the board of zoning appeals. So I thank you, those that think yourself, I thank you guys for doing what you do here on this board. It's not easy, and I don't think it's not going to be an exception to that. There's several challenging items on the agenda. The members that have been here a while, Mac and Bruce, y'all have probably seen this presentation a half dozen times now, but this is supposed to be a joke. One time it was funny, I think, but dealing with zoning variances can be stressful. We can, you sit there and you have to try to decide what the right thing is when you're dealing with these very difficult situations. And the board of zoning appeals, the most important thing that I try to communicate to members of the board of zoning appeals to understand is that your job is dictated to you by the zoning code. When everybody comes on board as a BCA member, and the planning commission is the same way to some extent. Whatever you are, in addition to that in the world, a CEO or a county commissioner or elected official for another city, which we've had that happen before. I've served with folks that serve other communities on these boards. You leave it all behind, and you're an appointed member that is essentially like a judge. It's a quasi-judicial body, is what it's called. And so you're sitting in a position where you have to take evidence and weigh evidence and make a conclusion that's based on that evidence. And so everything's a public hearing, and we definitely want to know what everybody thinks about stuff that comes before the board of zoning appeals. But it's not a political body. It's the decisions that the board of zoning appeals have to make have to be policy based. And they have to be based on what's in the record and what the applicant is proposing to do versus what the zoning code says they can do. And you can't go beyond it. You can't approve something because you like it if the zoning code says that you can't. And you can't deny it if you hate it if the zoning code says they can do it. So it makes it a very, very difficult situation sometimes dealing with the board of zoning appeals. But kind of back way up, we'll talk a little bit about background for zoning in the state of Tennessee and the board of zoning appeals. And then we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty about what the BCA deals with. But zoning in the state of Tennessee didn't exist until the 1930s, basically. Prior to that, there's an item on the agenda today where the house was built in 1930, and what would now be a setback. Well, in 1935, there was no such thing. Zoning didn't exist. Land use control did not exist unless there were some kind of private restrictions that somebody might have. And people could basically just put what they wanted where they wanted. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes I'm sure it didn't. But in 1935, the state of Tennessee created the Tennessee State Planning Commission and did the State Regional Planning Act that authorized cities and counties to do planning. And that same year, they passed these other acts. The most relevant to us is the County Zoning Act and Regional Subdivision Control Act. All those acts combined have the structure for planning in the state of Tennessee, and they're still in place today. They've been amended a little bit over time, but the law is basically still the same as it was in 1935 when they adopted all those rules. And they tack on stuff and they take off stuff, they evolve and changes, but the structure is there. And so when you'll talk to me about anything related to what the Planning Commission or Board of Zoning Appeals or the County Commission does with regard to land use and planning, you'll always hear me talk about Title 13, maybe Title 13 something or another. That's where it's at in the Tennessee Code annotated, which is titles 1 through like 9 or something, or whatever it is, 100 or something. Title 13 deals with public planning and housing, is what it's called in the statute. And so what we deal with is there in chapter 3, so county planning, and chapter 7, county zoning is set up there. And so everything that the planning commission and the county commission and the BZA is allowed to do or not allowed to do is basically somewhere right there. And all the state law is contained in those sections of the statute. So the BZA, the state law that permits cities to adopt ordinances also contains provision for the creation of the BZA. I think basically what it says is if you have zoning, you have to have a board of zoning appeals. It's that outlet valve, essentially, to let people get an appeal if they can't meet the strict criteria of the zoning code. And some other areas as well that the BZA is allowed to rule upon. And that's again a TCA, Title 13, et cetera, et cetera. And the BZA is strictly limited to the language enumerated within those statutes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a guy named Judge Dillon here, a little bit. Dillon's rule. In the state of Tennessee, the Board of Zoning Appeals can only rule on things that the statute says that you can. So the statute actually tells you guys what you can and can't make rulings on. And so if the county commission decided we want the BZA to be a dog court and talk about animal control and taking people and issuing pet licenses and stuff like that, can't do it. If they wanted the planning commission to weigh in on, or the BZA planning commission to weigh in on the annual budget, you can't do it. You can only vote on the things that the state law says you specifically can do. And those are kind of silly, but sometimes there's other things, like BZA turns somebody down and they want to appeal to the governing body who's elected, the city council or the county commission. Can't do it. That doesn't work that way. The state legislature says the BZA is fine when you go to court after the BZA turns you down. And so we've had that happen a lot where folks have wanted to appeal to the county commission or something, and that has happened in other places. And judges have had to say that was invalid and that was all a waste of time and money. You needed it. So the board is created. Chief legislative body, which is the county commission here, shall may create a board of zoning appeals of 3, 5, 7, or 9 members. So since the zoning was created in Sumner County in 1973, it's been 5. I believe. I don't know that it's ever been different than that. The legislative body also establishes some rules, and those are all at chapter 14 of our zoning code to govern the organization, jurisdiction, and procedure of the BZA. And so that's a little different than the planning commission. The planning commission adopts its own bylaws. The BZA actually has its bylaws kind of set up for by the county commission, and that's in our zoning code. And the board can adopt supplemental rules as well that are inconsistent with what the county commission said they can do. And this board has done that to govern revoking conditional use permits and that kind of thing in the past, kind of set up a little bit more of a formal process for that. The purpose of the board, essentially, writing a zoning code that regulates reality is very different. Reality is too complicated. There's too many different situations, and there's too many different things that can come up. The folks that work with me in my office can tell you it's something different every day. Every hour, every day, something different that you never thought could ever happen happens, or something that somebody can want to do something or ask a question you never heard before. And so because the zoning ordinance can't define the world, you got to make, there has to be an outlet. There has to be a way that people can go if they can't comply. Or if they disagree or the staff is doing things that they shouldn't do. So the Board of Zoning Appeals is set up as a safety valve so that people can go somewhere if any of those things happen. I'll talk about what those are here in a minute. But the BZA is very, very important in that regard to help people where you can, where the statute, the state law says that you can, to do that. That Dillon thing I was talking about, that's Judge Dillon. I used to have a picture of him in here, but I think I took it out. It's an old court case back in 1868. Judge John F. Dillon, I think he was out of Ohio. And what he said was basically, there's a narrow interpretation of local government authority. So a municipality or a county may engage in an activity only if it is specifically sanctioned by the state government. And so that runs the gamut. The county commission deals with that all the time. Any elected officials do in the city government, that kind of thing, where they want to do something, but there's nothing that allows them to do it in state law. An example might be, if the county commission wanted to set up a lottery to fund schools. Not allowed. State law doesn't allow you to do it. But it talks about when you get the land use and that kind of thing, it's very narrow as well on what you can and can't do. And so this is an opinion, Atkins versus Kansas, which is one of those Dillon rule opinions from 1903. This is a good quotation right here. Local governments are the creatures of the state for the purpose of exercising a part of the powers of the state. So in other words, the state has all the power. So the saying that I've always heard throughout my career is federal government has all the power, has all the money, state government has all the power, local government has all the problems. And so that's kind of the way it works. But local governments exist, and they're allowed to be set up by the state legislature to help the state legislature implement its goals, you might say. So what this opinion says is local governments exert only such powers as are expressly granted to them, or as may be implied from those granted. They may be, meaning the cities and counties, may be created or haven't been created. Their powers may be restricted or enlarged or altogether withdrawn from the will of the legislature. And put another way, there's another opinion somewhere out there that says something like, cities and counties are mere tenants in an apartment building owned by the state. And the state can evict them. And so if the state wants to take away the charter of the city of wherever, or restructure a county, they can get together and they can do that. There's nothing that those folks can do about it. So anytime anything comes before you, all the only reason I'm telling you all this is always think about what does the state law say about what we're being asked to do here. That's the one I'm driving at with this building through stuff is what does the statute say? Because we can't just make it up. We have to refer back to the statute on everything that comes before us. And so what are the powers of the Board of Zoning Appeals? There's really three. Administrative review. We actually have something for each one of these on the agenda here this evening. All three of these powers of BCA are going to be exercised here this evening. Administrative review, special exceptions, those are often called conditional use permits or uses upon appeal, and granting variances. So administrative review, what that is where somebody is aggrieved, they file an application that's been denied. And they say, well, I disagree with that. How do I get relief? That's an administrative appeal, is what we call it. Administrative review is what it says in state law. They get a decision from staff they disagree with. The safety valve is they get to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and seek to have it overturned. And so the board may reverse, affirm, or partially uphold or affirm the zoning administrator or building codes administrator that decision. Right there, because I'm distracted. In doing that, what they have to do, though, one of them is if they want to appeal the staff's decision, it's incumbent on the applicant to show where the staff has erred, and so that's what the law says. Basically, where it says where the enforcement of the zoning ordinance they erred in making an order or requirement. And so it's not just that they didn't like the decision; they have to show that someone made a mistake. And that's pretty. And I'm not saying we're perfect. We're certainly not perfect. But most of the time, when they come before the BZA, I've not yet had anybody that's been able to successfully prove that we made a mistake. It's usually that they disagree or the interpretation might be different. I read it this way, you read it that way, or that kind of thing. So this is just an example. This is not a real thing that's happening here in Sumner County, but just an example of an appeal that might be made. So you have a chiropractor that wants to open an office. Staff classifies it as a professional office, which requires a certain amount of parking. And he doesn't want to do that much parking. And so he feels like general office is more appropriate, which requires less parking. Well, the staff says, no, we disagree. We're going to hold you to what we interpret it to be. And so the chiropractor or whoever can appeal to the BZA to get the zoning code interpreted. And the BZA can say, yes, we concur with staff, or no, we concur with the applicant. Or they can reach another conclusion and say, it's neither one of them, you're both wrong. And here's what we decided that it is. And like I kind of said a little while ago, the BZA's decision is final. Short of a judge overturning it, whatever the BZA says it is, that's what it is. Other similar uses, I won't get too much into that, but there might be some things where you have something in the code that says, we try to do away with any similar use, those kinds of, that wiggle language, that really ambiguous language, when the code was updated a while back, because that's ago is interpretation of the zoning maps. So if there's something that's unclear about what something is zoned, if a property is split by a zoning district in the middle, the Board of Zoning Appeals can render a final interpretation of what the actual zoning of something is. That was something that was common a lot when we had paper maps. You don't have as much today where everything's digitized and it's a lot more clear, but it still can come up. Non-conforming uses, the Board of Zoning Appeals is seeing several of these. You're going to see another one next month, actually, where somebody, the staff says, hey, this use is not permitted, and they say, no, Grandpappy started doing this in 1945, and then no one continued to do it. The BCA can make a determination on whether the use is grandfathered, but non-conforming is the other way of putting that. A big one here that you guys deal with, and I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about this one and the variance one here, but special exceptions, conditional use permits, uses upon appeal, conditional uses, there's all kinds of different ways to put it. But the state law there, TCA 13, whatever, states that special exception is another thing that's important here. And so what a special exception is, this is a use that's allowed in a certain zone upon appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And what that means is that the Board of Zoning Appeals is responsible for looking at that use and any conditions that are in the zoning code. And the BZA's job, and I'll talk more about this in a bit, is to confirm that all the requirements of the zoning code are met. So like, an example would be in the rural residential zone, something like a veterinary office would be allowed upon appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. But there's a list of conditions that they have to meet. So one of them is they have to have at least 2 acres, and they have to have this, and they have to have that. So if they come to the BZA on a 1 acre lot, it's an automatic denial. The Board of Zoning Appeals can't substitute its judgment for the county commission, because the county commission in the zoning code has said 2 acres. But I'll talk about that here in a bit. But along those lines, the board can't act in a legislative capacity. The BZA can't make up law, can't make up what the zoning code says. It reads the zoning code and renders interpretation and implements it. The county commission, in our context, legislates what the code says. And so if there's a problem, if we feel like it needs to be 5 acres to have a veterinary clinic, or 10 acres, or maybe no veterinary clinic should be allowed, the route is not to get mad at the BZA for approving things that they have to approve. The route is for the county commission to look at the zoning code and change the rules. And then the BZA has to live with that. But the thing to remember is when people come to the BZA for special exceptions, what the courts have ruled is they're permitted. They're allowed, provided that you meet all the conditions. But if you don't meet all the conditions, it's not permitted. And so if the applicant can demonstrate that they meet all the requirements, the Board of Zoning Appeals is required to approve. Essentially, this is what the courts have said. And I'll show you some case law here in a little bit. Here's the first one here was, and these are all Tennessee examples that I'm going to cite. So we're going to talk about Tennessee. I don't want to go to California and talk about what they do with land use. We're going to talk about Tennessee for fixes. Father Ryan High School versus City of Oakville is a prominent case. Essentially, there was a private school that submitted an application to the city to get a special exception or conditional use permit to open a private school. And the neighbor came out, was very much against it. The Board of Zoning Appeals cited a whole bunch of different things that, all these general welfare findings that, hey, we just don't like it, it's going to make too much traffic, it's going to do all these things, we're going to turn it down. But there were no standards there that said that the BZA would take those into account. And so the court said that's outside the BZA's, the BZA bailiwick to make these findings like that. The BZA has to act within the authority given to it by the zoning code as it's written. And so they overturned that, and the Father Ryan High School was able to do what they wanted to do. Another one is here in Gallatin. Hunter versus the City of Gallatin. This was a good number of years ago, but the Gallatin BZA denied a conditional use permit for a mobile home park, so a trailer park. But the applicant was able to show that they met every requirement. They checked every box. The neighbors came out. Everybody was against it. And in the record, the BZA, this is something to really listen to. When I say this, the BZA said nobody wants this. Neighbors don't want this. This is not something that anybody feels like is appropriate in their neighborhood. And what the court said was BZA has to live by the ordinance. And what the quote from the court case there is, opposition by neighbors does not rise to material evidence standard for a basis of decision. So that's a lot of legalese. I'm going to talk about what that material evidence is. And that's a very important thing for the BZA to take into account. There's a way to turn things down, is what I'm going to drive out with you guys without saying, I don't like it. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be, I'm afraid that it's going to cause traffic problems or all these things. And I'll talk about those for a second. Going on a little bit more on the BCA case with this trailer park. BCA denied that conditional use permit. Chancery Court overturned the Board of Zoning Appeals and said they were wrong in doing what they did. And the Tennessee Court of Appeals upheld the Chancery Court when the city filed an appeal. What the court said is a conditional use is a special exception, is a permitted use which a zoning ordinance authorized under certain conditions. The granting of a conditional use is a duty imposed upon the Board of Zoning Appeals, provided that the use complies with all the conditions set forth in the ordinance. The BZA cannot act arbitrarily or capriciously, and that term right there, arbitrarily or capriciously, comes up all the time in land use law. Whatever decision you make, it has to be based on the record, it has to be based on the ordinance. And so for a situation like this, if folks don't want a trailer park to be able to go and place in spot A, the thing to do is change the zoning code to make sure that the trailer park can't go in spot A. Because if your zoning code says it can, then they can, whether anybody wants it or not. And so that's what happened with the city of Gallatin, and they lost that case. And so the folks that did the trailer park won. There's another one, Gregory v. Metro Government of Nashville. That's another famous thing here. Speculations, expressions, and fears, considerations of an aesthetic or political nature do not form the basis for a decision. Again, this is all for boards of zoning appeals. County commission is different now. If somebody goes to the county commission or the city council and says, I want to put a trailer park here and rezone my property to do, they're elected, and they're able to be lobbied, and they're able to say, my constituents don't like this, they don't want it, I'm not voting for it. And that's great, that's fine. But the board of zoning appeals is a quasi-judicial body that's sitting in an administrative function here, where you can't say this, you can't make decisions based on the way that the elected officials can. You have to make your decisions based on what the code says. And so that's that whole speculations and all that stuff. He's talking about for the board of zoning appeals and for the administrative body. Those aren't valid things to make a decision. So that material evidence standard was something that came up a minute ago. And there's an important case out of Anderson County, which is in East Tennessee, outside of Knoxville, on a landfill. There's a landfill that came through. And the city denied it, the board of zoning appeals denied it, and it went to court, and it was overturned. What the judge said was they made decisions based on what the audience came and told them and all the issues that they cited with property values and traffic and the roads and all that. But there were no studies entered into the record. There was no information there was no professionals that had been brought in to look at these things. That's material evidence. Material evidence is something that's been prepared and submitted by somebody that has a license to do that kind of thing. And so when you're, again, sitting at the city council somewhere or the county commission is a different animal, but the board of zoning appeals, when folks come to you and they say, this is going to lower my property values, it very well may. But there's an appraisal report is what the courts have said is needed to show that. So if somebody comes to you and says, I hired, the neighborhood's got together and we hired a real estate appraiser that's looked at this is going to lower our property values. I'll enter this in the record, Mr. Chairman. That's grounds. Then you've got something that hang your hat on there. If something needs, if you feel like something should be denied, that's a valid reason. Another one we hear a lot, the road can't handle the traffic. This road is busy, it's busy every day, it can't handle it. Has there been traffic study prepared by an engineer? If there hasn't, then you have no material evidence. Or if they did this, it's going to cost money. Drainage report prepared by a professional engineer. Another one that you hear a lot, and this is one I have to try to explain to folks all the time. There's endangered species, there's an Indian mammal, there's bats, there's salamanders, there's all those things. They very well may be, but that's outside the jurisdiction of the county. The county can't, we don't enforce the Endangered Species Act or the Antiquities Act, any of these things. That's all done by the state, for the EPA and whatever federal agencies. So when they go to construction, they have to get the appropriate permits from the state, and the state will flag all those things. So the county can't deny something based on the possibility of salamanders or some kind of endangered species or something like that. Again, our whole neighborhood is against it. Very well may be, but that the courts have said, and in Hunter case and a lot of others, that the neighborhood opposition doesn't constitute grounds for denial by the BCA. It can certainly be taken into account. That's why we have public hearings, to obtain information on what the concerns are. Another one, we want the property to stay like it is. We like to see the deer, we like to see the turkeys, we like to see all those things. I understand that, absolutely, but the property is entitled to be used based on what the zoning is protecting. And if the property owner requests to do something that the zoning allows, they can do it. And so, as Board of Zoning Appeals members, if you have concerns about traffic, if you have concerns about flooding, if you have concerns about property values and the diminution of property values, you guys are fully empowered to tell the applicant, we're going to defer you until next month. We want you to produce X, a traffic study or a drainage report or whatever it might be. Because the purpose of that public meeting, I don't mean to insinuate that the public meeting is useless. It helps you guys gather information and know about neighborhood concerns. But unless those are backed up by data, and if you make a decision without all that, then you're going to get overturned. If the applicant decides to go to court, the judge will overturn it. And they may award damages to the property owner as well. So this is what this next little section is about is how zoning codes are structured. So you got your permitted uses, and this is just an example. This is not in our code. But let's say that in a certain district, you got single-family dwellings are allowed, farming, home occupations, accessory structures, things that are permissible on appeal, churches, golf courses, libraries, schools. Again, I don't like the other similar uses. I think that's too broad, and you can have a lot of really wonky things come out of that on both sides, where applicants are like, oh yeah, a quarry is very similar to a farm use. And that's happened before. That exact thing has happened before, where somebody has made the argument that a quarry is actually a farming use. So, with special exceptions, conditional use permits, if there's uses in there, and that's where we all have to work together. If there's something in there that you think could cause a problem, if trailer parks are allowed in this district, or if a quarry or landfill or anything, we've done a pretty good job of mitigating those. But if there's something that you feel like could cause problems, here at the BZA is not you can't change it on the fly, but the zoning code would be amended to mitigate those attacks. And that's where we have to all read our zoning code and think about what it says, and try to play out what the consequences might be of what it says. And also a good thing that we do with most all of our conditions or things upon appeals, they also have to meet site plan requirements. So they have to go to the planning commission after you guys approve them. And then they have to submit a site plan and do all the state permits and all the stuff that they have to do. And then you can catch a lot of problems out there too. And so here's an example, not in our code, but a kennel of the conditions that you can impose. So if I've got dog kennels that are going to be allowed in the district or whatever, you can say 2 acres, no structure can be closer than 500 feet, that has animals in it, and the hours of operation are X. The BCA can impose all those conditions on the business, and that's legal. And you can come up with others if you want to. As long as they're reasonable, you're not doing things that make it impossible for that business to operate. Additional conditions beyond those can be imposed as well. But the best place to put a lot of those is in the zoning code. And so we try to do that with our code. There's another example for schools, that kind of thing, that might have a heavy traffic impact. You require that they have to go on the arterial or collector street. Now again, this would apply mostly to private schools and that kind of thing. Public schools are a different animal. And then setback requirements to make sure that they're not too close to other uses and that kind of thing. Mini storage, warehouses, y'all will probably see one of those here before too long. And then moving on to variances. The BCA, the variance is not something, and we talk about this all the time at the staff level, it's not something that somebody can come to the BCA because they don't want to comply. I would prefer to have my building here in the front yard next to the road. That's not grounds for a variance. State law, this is one of those times when the state has actually told cities and counties when they can grant a variance. And it's only when, and it says it right here, and this is straight from the state law, by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property. And so what it's saying is, and then there's the exceptional topographic conditions, those kinds of things. So what that's saying is, variances can be granted by the board of zoning appeals for setbacks and other items related to zoning, but only when, it's related to the property itself. So if they're coming to you and saying, we just would really like it right here, we think it would look better here, that's not grounds for variance. But if they say, I can't put it where it needs to go because there's a hill behind my house, or my septic system is behind my house, and I can't put it there, those are grounds, you can approve that variance, and that's a legal variance. And so that's just something to always remember. If they're couching their variance in terms of it's going to be too expensive to put it here, or anything other than something specifically based on the land itself. My land my lots was created in 1945 or whatever, and it's too narrow. I can't meet the setback requirements. That's implicit to the property itself, and so variance is acceptable in those circumstances. And so again, narrowness, shallowness, shape, topographic conditions, some other extraordinary or exceptional condition is what the BZA says, and that's that exceptional. So it's an exception. It's not something that would apply across the county. And you guys have to make findings of fact to that effect during the all three variances you'll see tonight, where I'll talk about each one of our 9 standards or 8 standards, 9 standards for variances, whether they meet those standards or not. And in order to approve it, you have to find that they meet those standards. Lakefront lots are a biggie where lots are too narrow in the county. Shallowness or shape, you got weird lots that have existed for a long time. Now, if somebody comes in tomorrow and creates a bizarrely shaped lot, which no surveyor would ever do, Mr. Green, I know that they would ever do that. They create some kind of crazy lot, there's a good argument that that's a self-created hardship and no variance is warranted. So a lot of the lots that will come to you guys for variance are ones that have been around. The lots have been around for a long time, since the 60s and 70s, a lot of the time, but not. Topographic conditions again, steepness, slope, those kinds of things where it's just not practical to comply. You can't. Other exceptional conditions, an example here is wetlands. If you've got a really big oak tree, right? Say you got a 200-year oak tree that's in the spot where this thing would need to go, and putting a building there wherever we're going to kill this tree. That's been held as an exception. That's a physical condition implicit to the property. And then floodplain is another one as well. And so if it's going to cause peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties or an exceptional hardship on the owner, then without any public good, then it can be approved. And so there's a few examples here. A lot of this presentation was created by a friend of mine in East Tennessee that I've definitely adapted over the years, but he has some examples. He was a tough planner, but he has some examples. Maybe they're even too hard in my opinion, but he's right. One of them is you have a production home builder that's requesting a building setback variance. He's got 5 models that he uses, and none of them are going to fit in the lot that he's got. So he needs variance to fit his houses in there. The lots meets our standards, and it's not some narrow lot that got created back in the 50s or something before we had zoning. It's a typical subdivision. What the board should say is there's no hardship here. Build a house that fits, adjust your model. We're not going to change our zoning code and create an exception for something that wouldn't be approved anywhere else. So that's an acceptable response there. 2, and this is where it gets kind of strict, but I mean again, this is what the law says. You have a homeowner that has room to build a single car garage, but he wants a double garage, which requires that setback variance. The board is totally justified to say, we're not denying you reasonable use of the property by saying a single garage would work. You can get by with that, and so it's warranted to deny that kind of a request as well. And then another one is your self-created hardships here. Let's say you got somebody with a lot here, and he comes in and subdivides it here. So he's created a new lot, and he's subdivided off a portion. This is all floodplain here, and there's nowhere to build, right? He decided to subdivide that off and sell a portion of it. And then immediately he needs a front yard setback variance to keep it out of the floodplain and meet requirements. This is a self-created hardship that he created on the lot with site difficulties. He knew that going in, and so that's a self-created hardship. The BZA is not allowed to create authorized variances for those kinds of self-created items. So this is another example of a variance that went to court. You had a petitioner with the stereotypical sweet little old lady. They got a variance for a rental apartment on her lot. What the BZA did, and this BZA used to do the same thing many years ago, but doesn't anymore. The BZA told the little old lady, hey, we're granting you specifically a variance. This is just for you, and we're going to make it a condition that if it ever sells, variance goes away. And they told her that she could stay there as long as she owned it or resided. And so the developer comes in and buys it, and he's like, what? What do you mean I can't use this as an apartment? That doesn't sound right. So he appeals the staff's decision to the BZA, and the board turns it down. Said, no, we said the little old lady is the only one that can do it. And the court then upheld the order. The developer there argued that the variance is not a personal license given to a landowner. The court agreed with the developer and ruled that a variance does run with the land. However, the court concluded that there was no basis in the first place for the variance. The whole variance was illegal. And so the board had no right to, the clerk couldn't stay in the apartment in the first place, couldn't keep the apartment because the apartment was illegal from the day they got approved. And so we used to do some similar things that with a hardship variance years ago. Now we have accessory dwelling unit permits and that kind of thing. So variance conclusion, if an applicant can demonstrate, again, narrowness, shallowness, shape, topographic conditions, that kind of thing, then thresholds met. Personal convenience, what they want to do, financial interest, those don't count unless, again, that lot-specific reasons are given for the variance. This is an important one as BZA members. Again, elected officials, it's a totally different ballgame, but on Board of Zoning Appeals, ex parte communications, there are things where people are calling you and emailing you, tracking you down at the grocery store, that kind of thing, to influence you on the decision that you're going to make as a board member, off the record and out of presence of anybody else. If the Board of Zoning Appeals, if it comes to light that the Board of Zoning Appeals has made a decision based on something like that, some kind of a communication that you had with somebody else, an applicant's lawyer or whoever it might be, the court's going to overturn your decision. And they say, no, you're going to have to do that again because you made a decision based on info that wasn't on the record. So again, for elected officials, legislative matters, they can be lobbied to the council. That's just part of it. And then quasi-judicial boards like the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission, ex parte contact between you as a board member and the applicant is prohibited. Just as likewise, you can't discuss it with the neighbors. If the neighbors are against something and they're calling you and emailing you, it's not appropriate to engage in that. Any communications you have need to be had here in public. That's part of it. And that's because the BZA is acting in a quasi-judicial capacity. Anytime it's acting as a board, you guys are like judges, essentially, as I've said. And you have to make a decision based on information gathered at the public hearing. And so the worst thing that can happen is if a board member, I can't support this. I talked to somebody about this a couple of weeks ago, and they told me all these things that were wrong with the project, and I can't support it, right? That conversation is not on the record, right? So, like I said, any decision you make needs to be made on the record. Sunshine Law, you guys are covered by the Sunshine Law as Board of Zoning Appeals members. Excuse me, sir. I apologize. Board of Zoning Appeals members are covered by the Sunshine Law. A meeting is the convening of a public body for a forum to make decisions. We have to offer adequate public notice. We publish the items that come before the BZA for public hearings in the newspaper and all those things. You can't do secret votes. And a meeting occurs when the public body convenes to make a decision or to deliberate. You guys can board members can bump into each other, talk to each other. It's not forbidden, but you can't discuss business. What the Attorney General has said, 2 or more members of the governing body should not deliberate toward a decision or make a decision on public business without complying with the Open Meetings Act. So that means the notice has to be provided if you're going to discuss something that's coming before the BZA. You shouldn't discuss or vote on any member, which you have a direct or indirect interest. And so if you have a conflict, you should vote on it. And that's financial. If you have a financial interest, it's not if you know somebody necessarily, but if you're in business with that person, if you be construed that one party or another has a financial interest, you should not vote on that matter. And you should declare the conflict as well at the meeting. And what's recommended is to avoid the appearance of a conflict or influence the decision. It's a good idea to step down. And that might mean leaving the room or going to sit out in the audience, whatever, until the decision is made. That's generally recommended. That's not a requirement or anything, but it's common. Non-Conforming Property Act. We might do some other training on this at some point. I don't want to spend too much time on that. But see, limitations on zoning powers. Here's the things I do want to touch base on. One of the things that you can't, a lot of people don't know this, but in the state of Tennessee, I go to Brentwood, Tennessee, let's say, and I have a piece of property that is zoned for residential use and doesn't have any private restrictions on it. I can put a double wide manufactured home on that piece of property. There's nothing the city can necessarily do about that. As long as it meets whatever type of standards that they have in place. If I mean, they have a little brick here or there, whatever, the manufactured homes are allowed. Sumner County cannot exclude double wide manufactured homes from any zoning district where residences are allowed. That would be something like a plan of development where you have private restrictions. The HOA can regulate all that stuff and can set up its own architectural review board and those kinds of things. Counties can't do that. But those rules, with all those protections, they don't apply to single wides. And so we have a different way of looking at single wide mobile homes, and we do try to essentially amortize those and get them replaced with other home types whenever possible. Just because as much things that they end up not being maintained and they're abandoned much more often than other homes are. And you see that around the county. And so, just as an FYI, one of the rules that we have is if a mobile home has been abandoned for 6 months or more, we don't allow it to be replaced. It's just sad. And platted subdivisions are not allowed to have single wide mobile homes at all. If they have one at the time that they're platted, it can't be replaced. This is some separate training here. This will come up at some point with the board zoning appeals. It comes up every few years. Persons with disabilities, 8 or fewer mentally or physically handicapped persons. If they want to establish what's like a group home kind of thing, that is allowed by state law. If you allow a single family home to be built, you have to allow that as well. And so those run the gamut from old folks homes where it's like senior living kinds of things. We've had a couple of those that have come through under these revisions. And they can also be things like drug and alcohol rehabilitation programs. And those have state protections. The reason that they do is because they have federal protections. It's in the Federal Fair Housing Act where the federal government has said you must allow these things. And so that comes up maybe once every year or two here in the county. Telephone and telegraph facilities, it doesn't quite look like that anymore. What that's talking about is cell towers as much as anything nowadays, but AT&T may or whoever may have other facilities. What that's saying is you can't exclude the construction of a cell tower anywhere. You can't put it in your zoning code to say cell towers are not allowed in districts, whatever. You must allow them. You can have some regulations in place for buffering and screening and those kinds of things, but you have to allow them. That's also something that will come up at some point here before too long as well. And the law is that's a separate training session to some extent, but the law is on the side of those companies who build those cell towers. And it's one of those things that the board has to make any denial of the cell tower on those material evidence standards. Very, very, very hard to do. And most of the times when cities turn them down or counties, it's overturned. Another limitation on zoning power is agricultural use of land. And so the county cannot regulate the keeping of livestock, any other agricultural activity in any way. And so we get calls about that a lot. My neighbor's got a gajillion goats, or had a lady the other day that would come down here from Illinois, I believe, that the smell of the livestock with her neighbors was really bothering regulating that. Cities have a little bit more leeway, but counties are forbidden from regulating that. And that extends to the buildings as well that are operated as part of the agricultural enterprise. We're not allowed to even require building permits for those. And if they have farm workers who live in some of those buildings, likewise, we're not allowed to issue building permits on those. And so that very rarely comes up nowadays, but it was something that was put in the statute a long time ago. This is probably a separate training as well, but federal law and state law, there's a Religious Freedoms Act in both federal and state law. What it says basically is that local governments and state governments and everybody else, you can't inhibit or curtail religiously motivated practices. So when a church comes through, you gotta really try to find ways to help them get approved, basically to some extent. That they're still subject to our zoning and the requirements that we have, but if there's things that come up where you need a traffic study or you need whatever it might be, you gotta show that hey, we really feel like there's a big concern here. You gotta really justify it. And that's set up so that folks can't come up with reasons to not allow certain religious activities. And probably the poster child for that in the state of Tennessee is the Rutherford County Mosque issue, where they turned down the mosque a few years ago for very arbitrary reasons, and they lost that case. They cited all kinds of things that didn't hold up in court. But the Religious Freedoms Restoration Act is something in the state of Tennessee that you need. Churches have wide leeway when they want to build a new facility. And that's all I have. We've got about 8 or 10 more minutes until the meeting starts, so we're going to try to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Josh, you mentioned about leasing. The base of the city on the state regulation.
Sure.
However, could we, is it within the purview of this board to require a report on such endangered species prior to approval?
I think you probably could. I mean, I think it's a reasonable request. Something like that is usually going to be done, as you know, when drainage report is done, that you're going to do a lot of that due diligence with TDEC and other agencies and that kind of thing. So I think you probably could request it. Whether you can make a decision to deny it based on the presence of salamanders or bats or whatever it might be, I don't know. So that might make me question myself there on whether you can require those studies or not. That might be one I'll need to do a little more research on.
And I see the trend. I don't want to get
Right.
on a lot of the items that Josh talked about. We've seen every one of them in the past 10 years. The group home, I'm going to build it here type thing. I'm going to build it here whether you want me to or not type thing. They sing it up. And so it's very helpful to have that pressure.
But yes, sir, I'll research that. That's a good question. I mean, I think, if there are concerns that those animals may be there, if you got a good sized project, they're going to have to, the state's going to require them to look into those things if they're going to be disrupting natural habitat, crossing streams, or whatever it might be. And so, I mean, it makes sense for the BZA to want to know that on the front end. But like I said, I don't know whether the BZA can deny it, because ultimately the state is the one that's going to make the decision on whether they met the requirements or not, and not the county. We don't have the criteria in our zoning code to say this is good or this does not comply with an ARAP, if you cross a creek or whatever. So I'm gonna look at that for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions? Let's take about 5 or 10 minutes before we get started. Thank you.
Yes, sir. If there's anybody here tonight that would want to speak, just make sure you sign up. There's different sign-up sheets for each individual agenda item. Just make sure you sign up if you'd like to speak for this evening.
We have approval of June 23rd minutes. Is there a motion? There's a motion and a second. Discussion?
I'll abstain.
All in favor say aye. One abstention. Approval of the July 23rd agenda. Josh, any changes? Without a motion, we'll let the agenda stand as written. We have the consent agenda, several items on it. I will read each item, and when I announce an item, I will ask the board if they want to discuss the item, and then I will ask the audience if they want to discuss the item. If no one does, it will remain with the consent agenda, and we will vote on all the consent agenda items on time. That being said, item number 1, Kenneth Maxwell, requesting a continuation of hardship variance at 1121 Windsor Drive in Gallatin. Board? Anyone in the audience that would like to discuss this? Saying by one, move to item 2. Alan D. Biggs, requesting a continuation of conditional use permit at 125 Dusty Lane, Cotton Town. Board? Any member of the audience that would like to discuss this? Saying by one, move to item 3. Linda Stout Dan, continuation of conditional use permit 165 West Roberts Road in Portland. Board? Any member of the audience would like to discuss this? Saying no one, item 4, John Birdwell, representing Melinda Birdwell, requesting continuation of conditional use permit at 2121 Dodge Lane. Board? Any member of the audience would like to discuss this? Saying no one, that concludes the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve. And a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Consent agenda is approved. We'll move to the regular agenda. Jack Rock is requesting a discontinuation of a special exception to conduct a temporary Christmas tree sales lot 2229 Highway 76 Portland. Josh?
Yes, sir, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, for form's sake, what I'd like to do prior to us getting into the regular agenda, if it would be okay, I have several items, just for form's sake, the attorneys tend to recommend that we do this. I want to enter several items into the record, our county zoning resolution, which is here, the packet for tonight's meeting, which was distributed to the Sumner County Board of Zoning Appeals and all the relevant materials that were in it. And finally, I want to enter into the record the Sumner County Board of Zoning Appeals staff presentation, which is going to be on the screen here this evening. We have a paper copy of that as well. So I want to enter all those items into the record, if it's okay.
And Josh, I'd also like you to enter this document that was on my desk.
Yes, sir. This is an item related to regular agenda item number 2, which is some correspondence from the County Building and Codes Director related to that item and the complaint, they filed the complaint on the item, as well as correspondence from myself as the property owner, outlining what they need to do, and attachments that were sent to that property owner as well. So again, this is for the item number 2, the 660 Colesbury Road item.
Thank you, Josh. Now, I'll turn it over to you to talk about item 1.
Yes, sir, thank you. Mr. Chairman, this is a request to discontinue a special exception, a temporary use permit that was granted back in 2022 by the Board of Zoning Appeals related to Christmas tree sales operation. There's a couple reasons that we bring these before the Board of Zoning Appeals. First of which is on these kinds of uses where a permit has been granted to the Board of Zoning Appeals, we'd like to have a formal record of the discontinuation, Mr. Chairman. That way somebody doesn't, years hence, doesn't somehow feel like there's a grandfather use or something like that here This would terminate the allowable Christmas tree sales use. Anybody in the future that wants to do that here would need to. And second, we do it as just as a way to check the site for compliance with the county zoning resolution prior to turn it loose and take that out of the forbidden board zoning appeals, I guess you might say. The joint property owners were notified via regular mail for this item. This is the subject property and area review of it. This is a special exception act request that was turned in back in 2022 by the property owner and their site plan as well. You can see where they did Christmas tree sales here this past year. I don't believe they intend to do any in the future unless they're discontinuing this permit. One of the things we wanted to kind of put on the BCA's radar here, though, when we went out and took pictures, we did note there appears to be another business being operated there at this time. There's it's a demolition business that's being operated with quite a few dumpsters and that kind of thing. You can see one of the vehicles that are Raven Reclaimed LLC. You see the dumpsters and other items affiliated with that use in these pictures. And this is from the state's website. The LLC is active at this time. And so I don't know if the property owners in attendance tonight that can speak to this item. Just to put it on the property owner's radar, that we'll probably be reaching out to have them come back for a permit to the board of zoning appeals on this, for a different permit. And so discontinuing this permit at this time, totally appropriate, but they will need some approvals for what's going on the site, it looks like.
Thank you, Judge. This is a public hearing. Think would anyone care to speak to this request?
I'm the owner.
I believe the property owner said that, yes, sir.
Come forward, please. We need to stand with
That's right. I'm sorry, he's property.
state your name and correct.
Jack Grove.
Thanks, sir. What do you have? Do you have anything to add?
No, the trees were a bust. We're not gonna go down that road again.
And you do understand that the county will be reaching out to you.
That's fine. You know, we've grown up quite a bit this past year, so we've been business out of the home and we've acquired a bunch of new things, so that's fine. But we need to get legal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to speak to this request? Seeing no one, what's well and board.
I'll make a motion to approve the request to discontinue the examination number one.
We have a motion and a second to accept the discontinuation. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries unanimously. Item number 2, Jeffrey and Carol Christian are requesting a special exception to operate an existing construction, sales, and service business at 660 Cold Ferry Road, Gillon. Josh?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is located at 660 Coles Ferry Road. It's own rural residential. The lot size for this parcel is 5.05 acres. This lot was previously located, Mr. Chairman, in the Gallatin planning region, which meant that until 2020, it had city zoning. We kind of took that zoning over in 2020. Apparently, the use didn't receive any permits from the city of Gallatin, per the city of Gallatin. Which is one of the reasons that it's here this evening. I'll talk about a little bit more about that here in a minute. The property owner is Carol Christian. The property owner is requesting a special exception to operate a construction sales and services use from this property. The business is known as the Barn Store, or perhaps the Barn Depot, but I think it was the Barn Store. The joint property owners were notified by certified mail. This item was advertised in the Gallatin News and Evansville Standard on June 29th. 2023. Mr. Chairman, this is the public notice that was placed in the newspaper. I'll let folks know about this meeting here this evening. This is an aerial photo from the county assessor site showing the scope of the use. You see there are quite a few buildings on site that are associated with the use and a bit out This is to kind of put it in its perspective. And what I will do actually is kind of go back maybe one more here, or a couple more, Mr. Chairman, to show what this is in relation to the rest of the county. This particular piece of property is located just outside the Gallatin city limits, just to on the southeast side of town. And so, timeline, Mr. Chairman, on this piece of property, as best as I can put it together here for the presentation. This piece of property was purchased by the current owners in July of 2014. We worked there, here's what I'll show here a little bit. They indicate that commercial activities commenced in earnest in 2018, sometime in 2018. It was located in the city of Gallatin's planning region until July 1st, 2020, which is when the zoning responsibility was assumed by Sumner County for this property and this entire area. Per the city planning staff, conversations in my office and the building codes office is having the commercial use at this location never got a permit, so they never rezoned the property or got a permit through their board of zoning appeals to operate what they've done there. One thing to note is, had that happened, had they obtained those permits from the city of Gallatin back in 2018, we would have to consider this a grandfather legal non-conforming use that would not require county permits. However, since it doesn't appear that happened, we've never been able to track down any permits. There may be something out there we don't know about, but since we've not been able to find any, that does mean that the appropriate county approvals have to be obtained. We've confirmed to the best of our ability that no permits have been obtained from the county as well, which that's much easier for us to confirm, obviously, because they're our files. So there's not many permits issued on this site since the county assumed zoning responsibility in July 2020. And so in January of 2023, county building code staff received a complaint from the city of Gallatin related to the ongoing commercial use, particularly related to damage being caused to trucks to the city maintained road and right of way. On January 17th, 2023, county building and code staff met on site with Mr. Austin Christian to discuss the unpermitted business operation. I believe Mr. Austin Christian is the son of the owners, and he met on staff. They've been very, very cooperative with us since we reached out to them on this. They met to discuss what was going on there. The codes office followed up with me as well. And on January 19th, 2023, my office met with Mr. Christian at here at the County Administration Building to discuss the unpermitted business operation. That same day, County Planning staff sent an email to Austin Christian. This is included in that small packet of materials that I provided at the beginning of the meeting. On January 19th, we sent an email to Mr. Christian outlining the nature of the business and its unpermitted nature, and requesting that a zoning compliance form be submitted and outlining the next steps. On March 22nd of this year, the property owner, Mr. Jeff Christian, submitted a zoning compliance application to the county planning office. That same day, we reviewed it and gave them a response back indicating that it was, per our records, unpermitted, and we classified it as a construction, sales, and services activity that would have to be approved by the board of zoning appeals, provided it meets all the requirements. March 24th, Mr. Jeff Christian came by the office for a pre-application meeting to talk about what he was going to need to do as far as hiring surveyors and those kinds of things. And then on May 12th, Mr. Jeff Christian submitted a special exception application for inclusion on the BCA agenda, and it made it on the agenda this month. So to kind of go through time and look at the piece of property, in October of 2016, which was back before the purchase of the property by the farm store folks. You can see the what was there. You had a couple of barns, looks like an accessory structure. And then there's a house right here. A little bit hard to see on this screen, but there's a house here that's still there. And you can see it evolve over time. In 2018, which is around the time that the activity commenced, you see several new buildings being built. Here, 2019, you see several more items have been added to the site. It kind of continues, the business continues to grow. 2021, you see additional materials and a lot of storage of material storage, and I'm not quite sure if that's dirt or mulch piled right here on the property line, but materials being stored. then the most recent area that we defined is from January of this year. So this is about 6 months ago. You see the build out of the site right now. They are proposing to add an additional structure at this time per the plot plan that Mr. Carmen turned in. I think it's right in here, but I'll confirm that with the plot plan here in just a minute. But there's one additional building that's proposed to be built. This is the zoning compliance application that we received. Mr. Chairman, because my writing is not great, I'm a product of the Weaver County school system. I've done a transcription of my writing there and the property owners as well. What the property owner is saying here in this zoning compliance application is that they wish to continue operating their contractor business, storing lumber and hardware and sheet metal. No construction is done at this location. They have 6 employees that work at the farm. Office hours are 8 to 4 Monday through Friday. They park 3 work trucks and have 3 forklifts. They're also adding 40 to 60 sheds to the plan. And they have other employees that work from their home. And so staff reviewed it with the information that they provided and noted to them down here. That's my handwriting there, that a special exception from the County Board of Zoning Appeals is required. Chapter 14, Section 1411. Use is classified as construction, sales, and services and is permissible in the RR, in the rural residential zone. If approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals, we direct them to complete a special special exception application. We let others item would be notice and placed on the agenda if it was accompanied by a survey plot, which is required. So this is their special exception request. And then the purpose of the request, what they're saying there is we need to be able to continue our home-based business, continue operating our contractor business. And so this is the plot plan that's been turned in, it was prepared by Mr. Jim Carmen, who's a surveyor here in Middle Tennessee. It's kind of zoomed in just a little bit. North is this way, so it's not oriented the way that it actually is. You see the existing buildings on site, and this is another proposed structure that's proposed to be built. You see some of these structures are quite close to the property line, some of them are just a couple of feet, it looks like, from the property line. And this is the existing home right here. I do believe, and Mr. Chairman, we did call to confirm, the property owners do live on site in this home. And that was what she indicated to us today. So we'll just take through the process of how the staff categorizes things when they come to us like this. We classify this as a building contractor operation. We've had similar uses come through before where they're actually fabricating metal components, have stamps and dies and presses and stuff like that. We didn't see that going on here or nobody going on. It's more of a straight up contractor operation where they're taking materials to the site and away from the site to construct buildings for people. So we classified it as a construction, sales, and services business. As we talked about during the training, the board could disagree with that, and they feel like it is another classification that's appropriate, but that was what seemed most obvious to staff. And so when we look at construction, sales, and services, it's a little hard to see on the screen, but what it says is in the rural residential zone, that SC means a special exception to the BZA is required, and that's how it ended up to the BZA. So there are special exceptions, special conditions that apply to construction, sales, and services businesses in the rural residential zone. First would be that a minimum lot size of 2 acres is required. This site does comply with that. Site plan approval shall be required as set forth in the zoning code. We're not through that step yet. If it's approved, then they would need to obtain site plan approval from the planning commission. C and D are a little bit more problematic, and particularly C, it's a physical limitation. What it says is all building structure, storage areas, employee and equipment parking areas, and other areas utilized for this use must be no less than 50 feet from all property lines. And so they cannot comply with that at this time, with the property lines where they are. They could acquire additional property from the adjoining property owner and meet this requirement potentially, but at this time they cannot. And then D, there's a requirement that all the building structures, equipment parking areas, and all the other areas that are less than 200 feet from view have to be screened with a type 2 landscape buffer or equivalent. They're not showing that on the plans. There is an opportunity at the site plan stage to have that requirement met. However, the physical limitation, Mr. Chairman, there's not enough room to put a type 2 landscape buffer. It's too wide between the property line and where the structures are. And so that requirement can't be met either at this time. Again, they can potentially purchase additional property and then rectified that, but at this time, that requirement can't physically be met by the property. And so, we went out to pictures as we do, Mr. Chairman, for everything that comes before the BZA. This is the blue rezoning sign, or zoning action sign. This is not a rezoning, it's a BZA zoning action. So the zoning action sign is out there. This is the view from the road. You can see, a little hard to see here, but you can see that the components of the business are visible from the street here. Coming up the driveway, that's the main home. You see employee parking there. Good number of trucks and vehicles for folks that can work here on site. Go back up in there, you can see the other equipment, bobcats and tractors and that kind of thing. And there's some storage containers and other items. You see building components that are staged up there to be put on trucks and taken off site. Fueling stations, or there's fuel tanks and that kind of thing, the gas equipment and vehicles as well. We were there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I would anticipate that probably a lot of the activity is off-site at that time of day. I don't know what comes back in the afternoons, how many trucks and that kind of thing, but wasn't a lot of movement and activity on the site at that particular moment. We see lumber stored here in these big awnings. And you see some of the trucks that they have here with the lumber staged up on them to take off site. And so it was noted, Mr. Chairman, on the special exception application, I think they called this a home-based business, and that does, as you know, that does mean something for the Board of Zoning Appeals. This business, I'll go through why, the bottom line of this business is who intends to be classified as a home-based business, and I'll outline why that is. It needs to be considered as a typical special exception by the Board of Zoning Appeals with those criteria that were noted. General requirements for home-based business, there's a few that aren't met here necessarily, one of which no display of any products are visible from the street at this time that they are. Second, the equipment used by the home-based business shall not create any vibrations, heat, glare, dust, odors, noise, or smoke discernible with property lines. This may or may not be met. The folks from the audience that are here maybe can speak to any of those issues that they may have experienced. And then F here, delivered vehicles used to deliver goods to the home-based business are limited to passenger vehicles, mail carriers, express carriers. And so what that means is tractor trailers bringing in loads of things and that kind of stuff are outside the scope of a home-based business. And so that probably is the intent to qualify. Minor home-based businesses can be approved by staff. It's certainly not one of those. And requirements for major home-based businesses. The first one is a little hard to read, I apologize for that. What that says is major home-based businesses shall have no more than 3 non-resident employees on the premises at any one time. I think this probably exceeds that. No more than 2 business vehicles on the premises at any one time, and so they do exceed that as well. They may not use more than 25% of the gross floor area of the principal structure, or in an accessory structure, they may not use more than 500 square feet of the accessory structure. And as you saw from all the accessory structures on site, it's much more than 500 square feet. It's a good many thousand square feet of accessory structures utilized by this use. And then outdoor storage of any material required BZA approval. So it's not necessarily that couldn't be approved. It's just that this is something that they can't necessarily have outright. In general, the BZA requires materials to be kept inside the building. And so the Board of Zoning Appeals is required to make 4 findings for special exceptions. The first being that the use, what it says is that special exception shall only be granted provided the board makes specific findings that the use is designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that the public health, safety, and welfare shall be protected. This is located along a urban collector roadway, so it is a significant roadway, relatively speaking, in the county. It is not a major highway, I would say, but it is an urban collector road. We have received complaints related to vehicular traffic generated by the use. We don't have a traffic study or anything in hand at this time related to that. but there's probably more anecdotal information about trucks use of the road, that kind of thing. As far as basic requirements for this use, there is no buffer proposed to be constructed, for the plot plan which is required. And, the components of the proposed use are much closer to the property line than 50 feet. That said, it is bounded by a very large, cornfield at this time, so it doesn't butt up against another home or something like that. This existing use has been in place for some years, and I've never obtained any city or county building or zoning permits or any buildings associated with the use. Apparently, they've all been constructed without permits. And if that's not the case, we haven't been presented with any permits that have been obtained for any, at least. If this is approved, it would need to return to the BZA every 2 years for renewal as per the BZA's standard policy. The next finding of the BZA needs to make is that it will not adversely affect other property in the area in which it's located. There is no buffer proposed. Again, the structure is closer to 50 feet from the property line, and we haven't received complaints related to the vehicular traffic. They have provided a business summary that outlines the scope of the business, which doesn't appear to meet the requirements for a home-based business. The use would need to again to return to the BZA every 2 years for renewal if it's approved. Third, conforms to all applicable provisions of the resolution for the rural residential zoning district, and is necessary for the public convenience in that location, and meets the specific standards below, or those highlighted ones that I showed you earlier, related to buffering and constraining. It doesn't appear to meet county zoning requirements at this time as it's proposed. There's no buffer proposed to be constructed per the plot plan. Again, that's easily rectifiable in theory, but the lot lines would need to be adjusted in order to make that work. Much of the proposed activity is less than 50 feet from the property line, which is required for construction, sales, and services uses upon field. And then lastly, shall be located so as to be compatible with the surrounding area and provide safety to those using the facility. No buffer is proposed to be constructed per the plot plan, again, less than 50 feet from the property line. And there have been some anecdotal complaints again about vehicular traffic generated by the use. So the BZA may want to, if they want to explore this further, have some kind of analysis done about truck traffic and site distance and those kinds of things. And so, Mr. Chairman, there's example motions on the screen to approve, deny, or to defer this one for a month to obtain additional information. The example motion to approve has a couple of example conditions. One of which is that they would need to obtain all the required permits for all the structures on site. And the approval would be a renewable period of 2 years. And so that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. I think there are folks that are signed up to speak, but I would like to try to answer your questions if you have.
I'm Austin Christian.
Okay, Michael, this part.
I'm here with them.
Okay.
We're both going to make the same points. We're the same thing.
All right, Mr. Christian, state your name.
My name is Austin Christian. This is my brother Michael Christian.
What do you have there?
Well, so a couple things I wanted to mention. We were aware, and as general citizens of the county and the city, I think it's important for us to make sure that our business is as presentable as possible. We don't want to have a facility that doesn't look good to people driving on the road. So we were bringing in a substantial amount of fill dirt to basically widen our area for storage of materials. And part of that fill was some not very good looking, basically hard granite and marble and things like that. So we've actually recently brought in multiple loads of topsoil and clay to essentially cover that, fill it up. We intend to build a berm on the front side of the property that will allow for proper drainage, as well as plant some large trees, arborvitae, something like that. Some sort of a large, essentially cover tree to block what we would consider to be not so great looking from the road. In terms of our multiple structures that were there when the property was purchased. Some of those structures go back as far as 1937, one in 1932, and one in the 1940s that we've essentially revamped, recovered, kept a lot of the historical relevance of those buildings, but kind of give them a facelift. Number one, for our obviously use of those structures, but also for historical relevance and then to make them more appealing to the guy when you're driving the road. But we do have a plan to, on the front side of the property, which is obviously going to be the visible side. That's the only road that comes anywhere close to that property. We have intentions to plant some sort of, a buffer barrier to create a visible break from the operation that we're putting on back there. In terms of the vehicular traffic, so whenever we purchased this property and started operating a business out of it, the majority of the houses that Mr. Eastland built on the north side of Coles Ferry, and the houses that Mr. Llewellyn built on the south side and Elm Drivers Lane, none of those houses were actually there. That was all just a pretty big farm. Got developed about a year ago, I think now, maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, started development. But as soon as that development started taking place, we actually widened our driveway, and you may be able to see it in some of those pictures. We widened the lower portion of the driveway so that we required all of our delivery drivers to turn towards the east and to hit, I believe it's Newton, or Odom's Bend, and then up to Steam Plant, and then up to Steam Plant so that they can access the main roads without having to go in that direction. In terms of employees, we have multiple salespeople, and the salespeople are outside salespeople, so they're constantly driving to people's property and meet them about the structures that they want to put on their property. Then they use some resources here and there at our facility to help them out, but 99% of the time, those salespeople are out, working with their customers within our radius of work that we work in, conducting business. So even those people which are in just regular, pickup trucks and cars, we ask that they turn east out of our driveway so that they're not creating so much traffic. In terms of some of the deliveries that we receive from other suppliers, same thing there. It's something that we could probably work on, but it is something that we're conscious of, and we're trying to do our due diligence with those suppliers to ask them to come in from the different access points. Not only for safety of the people that are obviously in the neighborhood, and the development that's happened just in the last couple of years, but just obviously for the sake of not having a truck driving, down that road all the time. So safety for them, safety for us, and it's just something that we started working on just in the last couple of years as those developments have gotten bigger and bigger. There are multiple structures out there. I do want to add that there, and if we can go back to that original, it's kind of the original property. Yeah, so right there, this is before we started, growing. Our business has grown exponentially over the last several years, and this is really before that growth started taking place. But I do want to add, there was a house on the property. The building that is the furthest north on this photo is still there. It had a dirt floor in it. We completely revamped it, made it a really, really nice structure visibly. The building directly south of it is still there. Again, that was one of the buildings that was built in the 30s. Completely revamped it. We use it to store as much material as we possibly can in it, hardware, things like that. And then, of course, we have added some additional structures to the property. Whenever the whole situation with the city planning region as opposed to the county was, we were actually approached about the situation for an exceptional use permit from the city several years ago. I personally can't say 100% that it was granted. was no future conversation about it. To my understanding, with my dad, Jeff, there was nothing else that we needed to do at that time. And then 2 years later or so, I believe it got annexed back into the county. And then, of course, we're here today, talking about the same thing that we talked about with the city again. So I don't know 100% exactly what happened at that time. I do know that we were approached about it. And then at some point in those leading months, we were at a point where it was basically there's nothing else that really needed to be done at that time. To talk about permits on some of the structures that are there, again, there are multiple structures there that weren't like new builds or anything like that. They were essentially just working on exterior facade to make them look different. So like you're seeing maybe a roof color change or something like that. It's already had a leaky roof. And we changed the roof out, maybe did the exterior facade, things like that. There are added structures on the property, 100%. But there were, there's a house that's built there that, you know, obviously we would have to have a permit. So in terms of having no permits on the property, you know, we're, at one point we're custom home builders as well as now post frame barn builders. And of course we work with Marshall on a regular basis and y'all as well in the zoning department. We have several customers that work with you guys in the zoning department. And we obviously understand that a permit is something that needs to be obtained. We respect that process. I think that there was a lot of confusion with whether or not, you know, the city was going to accept this as an exceptional use or not. And then whenever the annex happened, I guess that's what you call it, where y'all took back over that planning region. You know, I let you guys know that we don't want to do anything that we're not supposed to be doing. But at the same time, I have the understanding that, you know, we've been operating a business there for 7 years now. Again, we're approached by the city. It kind of fizzled out on both ends, the way I understand it. And, you know, we're obviously willing to work with, you know, what we need to work with to do it the way that we need to do it. But we also have a very successful business that we need to operate at the same time. So. Okay.
Michael, you ready to go back to this?
No, the only other thing that I would like to add in regards to the I guess property damage to the county roads, and I guess the truck accident is what they're referring to. I guess to direct to respond to the complaint, I guess that was in there that was listed. One of our delivery drivers, just so everybody understands exactly what happened, one of our delivery drivers was driving down the road, about to take a delivery. There was a car headed directly into him on the wrong side of the road, and his choice was one of two choices: was to go head on or take our brand new truck and fully load it and put it in a ditch and flip it. Not an easy decision to make, as you guys can imagine. His decision was to put it in the ditch and flip the truck. He rode it out. He was okay, thank God. But whenever he took the truck off the side of the road, there was some scraping done to the asphalt there in front of those new developed houses. There was also a private driveway bulkhead that was damaged, which we personally took care of. But not yet. Yeah, we've talked to the customer. We've been in talks with them. There was obviously a lot of construction going on at the time, and we're just basically waiting on them to tell us that they're ready for us to come fix that. But that's how that happened. As far as just regular use, I think it's important for you guys to know. Just our day-to-day regular use, not a truck wreck or truck accident. Whenever somebody was on the wrong side of the road, we have done things on our end with the driveway, on widening, things like that, to where we don't damage the county road. Our trucks going up and down the road, our salesmen when they leave the office, us coming to work in the mornings, don't do any damage to the road. That was a specific instance that happened. It was an accident. It was a truck wreck. And other than that, to my knowledge, you correct me if I'm wrong, there hasn't been any damage done to any of the county roads because of the business. That was just an unfortunate event that happened, and it caused a little bit of damage. So just wanted to make that point.
Thank you. I have, the board may have questions of you.
Sure.
I have two questions, and while you're here, I'm going to ask you. you aware of any permits that were obtained that we couldn't take?
Yeah, it's their house.
Yeah, for the house that's on site.
So there was an existing home there that was very dilapidated, ran down. We actually tried to save it. It was a log home.
If we provide our staff with copies
For the home permit?
of any of it.
Yeah, I would assume so. I mean, it was back in the city, of course. But yeah, we built an entire home with multiple inspections based on it.
Your advantage, if any permits, supply them to our
Yeah, that would probably be the only one, as far as I know. We didn't pull any permits for re-siding or re-roofing any of the existing buildings, and we did add an existing one of the new buildings, directly in line with one of the older buildings that have been there. What's that?
When was the new building?
Oh, probably somewhere around 3 years ago. If you look, it's kind of hard to explain without like a pinpoint, but
And
there's a lot of buildings there. Is that laser pointer?
That's a bold move, given that to him.
So, the house that you see right here, that is a brand new home. It looks old. When you pull up and drive it, it looks like it's a home built in the 1930s, but it's not. There was an existing home there. That, we 100% know, we obviously pulled a permit for that. There was septic permits and everything involved for that because we had to.
So electrical.
Yeah, it's the electrical permits, the whole 9 yards for the home, when we weren't able to save the historic home. That was an existing building that was already, there. That was an existing building that was already there. And then there were 2 other buildings behind this building here. Yeah.
There you go.
So there is the big building that's still there with the copper colored roof now. There was another very, very large barn that was half caved in behind that, right there. That was unsaleable, I guess you could call it. So the buildings that we've added post-purchase is the building here that we put in line with the existing building that was there to replace the old building, correct. And then we added these 2 awnings. These are just roofing gable awnings for lumber storage. But everything else on the property, with the exception of that, was
An existing
an
structure.
existing structure. So these are the new structures here. And again, we put those in line with the existing building that was there. We also found out post building this building, that a portion of this building, depending on which survey you look at and which one you pull, it's like a lot of property lines. I'm sure you guys are used to seeing, but there was some real confusion in this area right here where the actual property lines were. The previous owner of this property that we actually purchased this property from was George Brilliant. He gave an explanation of the property lines and things that made a lot of sense. It made sense with the agriculture, the crops, the soybeans, the corn stuff that they grow here. It made a lot of sense, and we made all of our decisions based on basically that information. In other words, I guess my point is there was no ill intent here. It wasn't like we were trying to squeeze these buildings as far as we could to the property line. There's plenty of room for our operation for these buildings to even move this way. It was just all based on the information that we had, based on the surveys that we were looking at, and the existing structures that were on the property. Since George has sold the property, I believe Mr. Holloman owns the property now. There was, as a new property owner would do, there was some debate on whether or not these buildings here actually fell on the property or not. He came to us directly with a concern that he had, which was resolved within 2 days, within 48 hours, because we're good neighbors. The business is my parents' home, obviously, but we're also sensitive to the neighbor effect here. So just something else to point out. There was no ill intent there, and as the new owner came in, he had a concern. We resolved it within 48 hours. So all that's been done. And then one little thing I want to point out, and it's hard to visualize for anybody here that cares, other than the board. This area right here that looks like this kind of white snowy cat mountain, that is that fill material. That was all rock. It was all granite, marble rock, and it's ugly. It's very ugly for the road. Our intentions from the get-go, and I'll just explain this earlier, but I wanted you guys to be able to visualize this. That was just fill material, and since then, since I believe the pictures that you guys have taken as well, all that is covered with pretty topsoil now, which will eventually be pretty grass, and then our intent was to plant some large trees across here to give that buffer from the road, just out of respect for the new homeowners on the road, because, I'll stress one more time, I think Austin made a point of it, but their Coles Ferry Road over the last 2 years, is a lot different than it was whenever this property was purchased and the decision was made to run a business here. And part of our decision to run a business here is there are about 6 to 8 other businesses extremely similar to ours, very, very similar to ours, with a similar footprint, that operate on Coles Ferry daily. Some of them more imposing on the surrounding properties than ours. And that was all taken into consideration when the property was bought, when we decided to put the company here. I know the rules are the rules, and I know that's what matters to you guys, but just to give you an idea of our thinking, our thought process when we purchased the property, Coles Ferry was a lot different then. It was a totally different environment, and then, as you can imagine, as a business owner or as a homeowner, granted there was some switching back and forth from the city to the county. Never have we had a complaint, never have we had anybody, a concerned neighbor, say anything about our operation there at the scale that it is now, until about 25 homes were built within a few hundred yards of the office, and unfortunately it didn't become an issue. I don't know if it holds any weight, but I feel like the grant's being said.
I have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
Do you get sales traffic?
No, sir.
No sales traffic.
No, all of our sales are done outside, so we receive leads and our sales people go to the homeowners property.
Did you try to get any permits for all the excavation that is going on? The county has a land disturbance permit, the state has a land disturbance permit. Where if you disturb more than they portray, you got that permit.
So at the time when we purchased the property, it was a farm. It was a working farm. It was agricultural use.
Okay.
Just as the field that you can see in that picture there is disturbed daily or yearly.
But you don't know the fee.
What's that?
You don't know the fee.
No, I didn't disturb that field, but we did disturb.
Listen to me for a minute. John's brought it up during our session.
Mhm.
Agricultural activities are exempt from land disturbance law.
Mhm.
A 1,000-acre construction site is not.
Mhm.
I don't care what they do next week. But I'm asking why didn't you all get a permit? You're in construction. You know what's required. I'm just curious.
Well, we were doing excavation to propose a new building site for this stuff here. This was to answer your question, we didn't pull a permit, a land disturbance permit for that, but in our line of work, of course, obviously every single day, if you guys are in zoning, you guys know who the Warren store is. My company's grown drastically over the past several years. Everybody in building codes knows exactly who we are and know that we have customers coming to you, probably daily. And we understand that there are permitting rules, and we obviously require all of our customers to abide by those rules. But my understanding was that for a land disturbance permit, it was associated with some sort of construction, new structure permit. But in terms of moving dirt, we've got a 150-acre farm in Cottontown.
But that's not here.
Right, I understand that.
Sometimes you can do what you want to do, agricultural.
What's Gallatin?
Well, it's actually Gallatin. It's actually Gallatin County, but so we've got a farm out there, and we've got a garden that's 3/4 of an acre or an acre big. Is there a land? And this is just out of curiosity. Is there a permit needed to disturb the soil for a garden?
Not for garden, but it is for construction activity. Now, last question, and then the board may have some. How many trucks, semis, or some 5-ton trucks, how many do you get daily?
Daily? We have 3 that operate in our fleet, but we only have 2 truck drivers that are delivering those runs.
What about semis delivering
We
material?
get deliveries on Monday and Thursday, for metal, one
Just
truck,
one.
weekly, and then occasionally, I'd say probably, bi-weekly would probably be a little more, common than it actually happens, but we'll say bi-weekly, we have a lumber truck that comes and replenishes our lumber stock.
Board, or do you have any questions of this request? Yes, sir.
Yes, I have one question. How many employees do you have on site at one time?
At any given time, the company as a whole has around 24 to 25 employees, but actually on site at one point in time, the average is between 4 to 6 employees. Because again, the majority of our sales team is out on, sites. The day that you took the picture, so we conduct a sales meeting once a week. I don't know if that picture was taken during our sales meeting to see that many vehicles there at one time. But again, the majority of our people are off-site doing sales calls or delivery drivers or things like that.
With the exception of the morning of the sales meeting, that we call everybody in to just see how things are going, and everybody leaves.
Other questions?
I don't have any other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
The next person that's signed up to speak, Councilman Strong.
Hi, my name is Catherine Strong. I live at 630 Colesbury Road and own a couple pieces of property on Colesbury that are just a couple houses down from the Barn Store area. And I do want to say that if there are 6 to 8 other businesses on Colesbury Road operating at this capacity, I have never seen them. I have no idea what businesses they're talking about. Our family has lived on this property for a long time, and we have children, and we walk this road, and my kids have never ridden bikes on this road because it's not a neighborhood road, but we do walk without sidewalks, and so regardless of which way semi-trucks are coming into this residential area, it is not safe for residents that live on this road. Even if it's only a couple times a week, it's still a couple times a week. My family actually bought a piece of property that you access from driver's lane, but it backs up to our property, with the hope that we would one day be able to give that to our children and then build a house on it. Well, that property is adjacent to where the Barn Store has continued to build and grow and house materials to the extent that ultimately we sold the property because no one will ever want to build a house right there and look at what they have accumulated and built and grown over the last several years. And the person we sold it to has no intention of building a house. He's building a storage unit on it because it's just not ideal. So it was very unfortunate that we had the opportunity to get property where we could keep our kids, or give our kids an opportunity to stay close to mom and dad, but the more we drove the property on our ATV and saw this continued growth, which is great for this business. I'm very happy that their business has grown so much, but it is not appropriate for a residential area. If their business is so successful, then there's lots of area in Sumner County, in industrial park, we have a whole industrial park, there's lots of commercial areas that they need to move this business. Because even if this is granted on a 2-year extension, I'm not real sure why you want to invest in all these structures when 2 years from now you could be told you can't operate it anymore. So as they spoke to, Colesbury Road has exploded with residential growth. We're 5 minutes from town. We're not way out in Cotton Town. This is a very residential area, and I would just ask that you all not grant this exception so that this area can continue to be a residential area and continue to grow as a residential area. And I think that's all my points. My husband is going to speak to his points, and my brother-in-law actually lives right next door to the Barn Store, but he's in North Carolina and couldn't be here tonight. So he wrote a letter, but he has more thoughts on what the actual result of all this equipment and material right up against the property line is for property owners. So thank you all for your consideration.
Justin Strong.
Like she said, I just have a letter to read from my brother. I do have some.
State your name.
Justin Strong, and I'm 630 Coast Area as well.
Thank you.
I just have a letter from my brother, I do have copies if you guys would like one. Also has some pictures that I'd like to show if that's okay.
Anything that you would like to present us, we need to get and enter it into the record.
Okay, well, do we need to do that now? Is that okay? I'll just explain them as I am to you, if that's okay. These are all pictures of the stream that is located between the two properties, and there was just some damage on my brother's property, and those are all taken right after the damage was done, and my brother had fixed some of the fence line that was damaged, and we're pretty certain that it was done by them. And this was a picture taken today of where the berm that was put into a stream has not been removed and it's still there. It's just a dirt berm still. So, and my brother's letter talks to that as well. So, and here's the letter if you would like any one of those. And I'll just read my brother's letter and then I'll be done. Committee members, my name is Nick Strong and I live at 640 Coles Ferry Road. My property adjoins the property submitted for a bid. Over the past years, since the applicants have owned the property, they have been steadily adding structures, fill dirt, and construction debris. In doing so, they have had numerous loads of dump trucks, dumpsters, and tractor-trailer trucks constantly delivered. This has added heavy truck traffic to an already overwhelmed roadway that is not designed for this capacity, not to mention the noise disturbances that are constantly created by continuous traffic on the driveway entering the property. Tractor trailers delivering at all hours of the day pose a serious threat to the safety of people traveling this road. The entrance is close to a blind curve, which allows minimal distance for traffic to stop if a tractor trailer is turning into the property. The structures that have been added for storage of construction materials have increased the stormwater runoff. The fill material that they have placed on the property unmonitored by the county has impacted the stream along the edge of the fill slope, pushed trees down on the property, bordering the property to the south. There has been no attempt to stabilize the slope from this fill, and therefore sediment is constantly entering the stream during each rain event. Dumpster loads of trash or construction debris have been mixed with this fill and are visible from the roadway. Construction materials and storage containers floated with lot as well. This has a negative impact on the surrounding properties. Will anyone want to buy a lot with an operation like this beside or behind the property? If so, how much will it affect the property values? This past winter, someone from the applicant's property crossed the stream with an excavator, tore down the fence, cut limbs, and pushed trees on my property. The stream was also dammed with a berm approximately 3 feet high. This was apparently done to provide a lane for deer to travel towards the line set up on their property. Now the applicants want to make a special exemption to legitimize all the illegal activities that are taking place. I simply ask this committee to not allow it. The rest of the community will suffer the consequences. So sincerely, Nick Strong, P. And I just wanted to mention that those pictures are the berm that he described inside the stream as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Linda Sutter.
No relation. Linda Sutter, I live at 709 Coles Ferry Road. Don't really have anything new to add that hasn't already been said, but the road is only 18 feet wide, no shoulders. There are multiple semi-trucks going up and down the road in regards to a business. So I'm concerned about when they're expanding, which is what the presentation indicates, that they'll be continuing to grow because they're gathering up the building, how that's going to affect our road and the safety of vehicles and people up and down the road, because it is a rural residential area. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that has not spoken that cares to speak to this request? Seeing no one, I want to close the public hearing. Board deliberation.
Let's have a couple things. If Josh could go back to the buildings, site plan. So the 50-foot 50-foot buffer, we've got some old buildings, we've got some new buildings, we've got a couple new buildings that we built inside that as well, right?
Yes, sir, and I need to go back and look and see what was there. I think I maybe got the wrong way. Oh, that's the wrong. Okay. So if we go back, probably to 2016, I don't know that, it's hard to say, but I don't know that any of the buildings would have necessarily been in the buffer at that time. Maybe one would to the south. But if you look at the plot plan today, I mean, you can see that, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of them located within a setback, there, that may or may not be zoning requirements and so, but, certainly the newer structures, you know, if there's, you know, we take a look at it and can conclude that there's always been a building at that particular location. I mean, I think that there's, you know, we're not so obstinate that we want somebody to tear down a building and get the buffer in, as long as they can make an accommodation and get some kind of planning done in between, you know, where that building has long stood and the property line. I think we would try to work with somebody on something like that. But, I think with what you see on the screen, there's just been a lot of new buildings that have been built that make it impossible to comply probably across the portions of the property that have the most impact.
On employees, they were definitely over 3. I think we stayed in the requirements. So we'll verify.
Yes, sir, for a home-based business, and this can get a little bit wonky here, but, the BCA is given a good bit of grounds to allow flexibility to folks that run the business out of their home. But this probably can't be looked at as a home-based business, essentially, is what I was getting at there. And so when I talk about leeway, there's been some flexibility afforded to folks as far as buffering and those kinds of things, where they live and operate the property, provided they can meet all those requirements. But given the scope of the activities here, this just doesn't comply as a home-based business, and needs to be considered as a standard special exception, or potentially, you know, sent to go to the county commission for rezoning, probably the 2 options for a property like this.
Thank you.
Josh, what you're suggesting, even from our study session earlier, there are many aspects of this request that exceed the ability of this board to act. Is that correct?
Not necessarily to act, but I mean, there may be, the board may look at it and feel like there are aspects that preclude the ability of the BCA to approve it.
And this almost was, I think we have a few choices. We could, number one, we could defer the item and allow the requestor to try to bring forward compliance with rules and plans, and instead of words what they're going to do, put in a drawing what they're going to do. That's one thing. Another thing is to approve a conditional use, not based on home-based business, but based on construction as a special exception in the RR district, which would require more compliance than what we have now. The other thing, and the third one, as I see it, is to deny the request based on the request itself. And the request itself asks that it be a home-based business, which we have been told that it's not. It is a home-based business, but it's so far removed from what we can approve that we deny it, and which would allow the requestor to go for rezoning, possibly even go back to the city of Gallatin and ask for annexation, something like that. Josh, is there anything I'm missing?
No, sir, I think you covered it there. I mean, and that's essentially what the before the board there to approve, deny, or allow, give them another month to work on it and see if they can, I mean, essentially, the gain compliance is gonna involve relocating structures, which is probably not possible, or, purchasing additional property, which is always possible. That's probably what will allow them to come into compliance is making the property bigger so that they can meet the buffer requirements.
What's the will of the board?
Well, I don't think we have any option here on this one. Well, looking at this, Chairman, to find that they're not meeting requirements and to deny based on motion. Is that a motion of two? But I point out the reason being that, the buildings didn't meet setback requirements. Employee number on home-based business. And, I think the safety and welfare too, for that road and number of trucks there, they got, and then out there as well, be listed on my part, that's fine, but that's my motion.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second based on example motion 2. With the notation that, of the non-conforming buildings, the non-permanent,
That's the biggest mess I've ever seen.
I'm sorry.
It's the biggest mess I've ever seen. Lots are too close to the property line. There's just all kinds of stuff that are out of our jurisdiction.
Discussion? All in favor of the motion to deny, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Like sign. Aye. Motion carried. The request is denied. And I'd like to predicate my voting against the motion to deny, in that this company has doing a lot of business in the county. I think that if they made some alterations, they could probably be good to the county. And that's my reason I disagree. Item number 3, item really Schmindel.
Close. Schmiddle.
Representing McLean Homes, requesting administrative appeal staff decision regarding rainwater gathering as their primary water source. 593 F, Branch Road, Cottonwood.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this property is on rural residential located on 80 Branch Road. It's about 68 acres. It says Mr. Bob and Bridget Schmiddle are represented by Clarion Homes or the applicant. What they're seeking to do here, Mr. Chairman, with this application is to appeal staff determination related to county requirements contained in Chapter 14, Section 1414, subsection E of the county zoning resolution related to the availability of potable water. The applicant is proposing to utilize the rainwater harvesting system since well water is not available. And I've spoken with Mr. Johnny Johnson, the builder for this, the owner of Clarion Homes. Yesterday, he was able to be here today. His son is here today and can speak to this, but he confirmed to me yesterday on the telephone, and I'm not saying paperwork for Wyoming Utilities, but one of the concerns I have is that is there a water line, a public water available? Okay, well water's not available, but is there a public water line in the road? And he was able to confirm that the nearest, what he told me was the nearest water line is 0.6 miles away on the road. So public water is not available either. What we've done is this is a very unusual situation. Obviously, the board's never seen this come up before. Most of the staff have not had this come up. We've consulted with other jurisdictions in Tennessee, including Williamson County, Wilson, consulted with all my colleagues in those counties, and none of them have had this come before me. And so we didn't know where to go. This is not one of those things that staff is not necessarily opposed to, but it's unique and novel, and we felt like it would be inappropriate for staff to make an arbitrary approval on something like this without some kind of public discussion on it. And so, joint property owners were notified by certified mail. It was advertised in the Gallatin News on June 29th, 2023. This is an aerial photo of the subject property. This is the notice that was in the newspaper. This is that section 1414 subsection E of the zoning code. What it says is all applications for development shall include proof of the availability of potable water and proper treatment and disposal of wastewater in accordance with applicable county and state regulations. And so, potable water to the county typically means access to a potable water line or a well. And in certain circumstances, wells are allowed, others are not. But this is not able to conform to either one of those, and so it's kind of outside of our experience. And so it was referred to the Board of Zoning Appeals, or the applicant decided to. And so this is what happened was on this, with this item, the applicant came to the County Building and Codes Department on June 13th and requested a fill out building permit application, which was denied by the Building and Codes Office. What they stated was, they cited the plumbing code, which is outside of the county's jurisdiction, and chapter 14, section 1414 of the state subsection of the county zoning resolution related to availability of potable water as the grounds for their denial. In due course, they filed an administrative appeal the next day. So it was a timely appeal that came to my office appealing that decision. And this was completed on behalf of property owners by Mr. Johnson. What he's saying here is the Schmidls have elected to use Perfect Water's rainwater harvesting system to provide clean, potable water for their residents. They purchased a 69-acre tract in 2019, and built a barn shop in October 2020. They constructed a bridge to the county specifications as well. They drilled 2 wells for water, and both struck natural gas and had to be capped. They then selected the Perfect Water system to supply water for their home. They go on to say while rainwater harvesting for potable water is new to Sumner County, it has been used throughout other areas of Tennessee and the U.S. as a viable alternative to public water, well, or spring water. To show that the system is suitable, the Schmidls are willing to provide independent testing to validate the quality of the water and submit test results to the Sumner County Building and Codes Department prior to them issuing a certificate of occupancy for their home. And so that may be something the board wants to have actually is some kind of a certification if that's something the board wants to see prior to issuance of the CO. This is just information that was provided by the contractor in the packet. I believe the contractor's in attendance this evening and has a presentation they sent to me. If the board wants to hear them expand on the details of this system and how it works. This is the site here. There's been some dirt work done. They do have permits, I believe, for the barn that's there. And as they mentioned, they've obtained a permit for a creek crossing that they have to do as well. You see the creek crossing here. That's done according to the county's standards. But in addition, they are wanting to build a house at this time, and so they need public water in order to do that. And so, Mr. Chairman, there's example motions on the screen to uphold the initial staff determination that the rainwater harvesting solution proposed by the applicant does not constitute a potable water supply, or to overturn it and concur with the applicant's assertion that the rainwater harvesting solution does constitute a potable water supply. And I do want to clarify for the record that staff doesn't care one way or another if it's upheld or not upheld. As I mentioned, this is not something that was turned down out of prejudice by the staff. It was just a very unique situation that we felt like needed to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to be considered.
Thank you.
So,
Bob?
Yes.
And I won't try to,
Optional.
Okay, Bob.
And the property owner. I'd like to submit this. This is a photograph of the actual system that's on the premises now. That is the filtration system.
thank you.
but that is the actual filtration system. Basically, as far as the history, like Josh said, purchased the property about 4 years ago. We knew that there was not municipal water available at the time. We figured we'd dig a well, there are some wells out there. We're not able to strike water with the well, so did a little research and came across Perfect Water. They're headquartered in Knoxville. They've been doing these systems for 12 years now, I believe, 12 years, so it's not a new system. It's tested and tried, and several of them in Metro Nashville and other areas, Lebanon, places like that. We had Marshall came out and he said, no, he didn't see the system. He's seen the tanks, he saw the filtration system. At that time, we did not have it running because we had no septic at that point. The system is up and running now. This water came from the system. I've been drinking it for over a month now. My family's been drinking it for over a month now. So I think the proof's in the pudding there. I'm standing here before you with no issues. It's a dual ceramic filtration system with a UV light that it goes through before it's used. It's collected directly off of a metal roof and with gutter guards and a pre-filter system that also goes through there also. So it is the best water I've ever tasted. And we have plenty of it. It doesn't hamper anybody else around us. Water comes off my roof. They don't see it, doesn't take anything from them. And it's actually something that is in many ways considered a better option. I do think the big thing about this is that there's not a lot governing it right now, and that's why Dennis is here to kind of talk about the system a little bit more, because I think it's something that you may see more of in the future, and it'd be nice for the board to have a little better idea of how it all works. Concerning the water testing, I spoke with White House Utility, and they told me to call the Department of Health, and they want to do water testing. So then I called John Waters' office. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's the microbiologist for Hendersonville, and he said that they want to do private testing of water. He gave me the name of Pace Analytical, which is in Mount Juliet. They will not do private water testing, they only do municipal and large plant testing. He told me I could try Tennessee Tech. I called Tennessee Tech. Their lab was closed the week of 4th of July. So if anybody knows somewhere I can get my water tested, I'd be happy to test it. But I have done my due diligence and I followed the trail to get it tested. I figured I've been drinking it, everybody else is drinking it, so if y'all want to sip, I'll pour you some.
I have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
After receiving the packet, I've read quite a bit about this, because I'm interested in it. I think it's very prevalent out west. But my question is, bonding,
Yes.
do you feel confident, and it's not another county's no government, do you feel confident that you have enough storage capacity to meet your family's needs?
Yes. So with the system I have 3,600 square feet of roof on my shop. It's a 60 by 60 roof, which will give approximately 2,500 gallons of water for 1 inch of rain, just to give you an idea. So the rainfall around here is plenty for that. Right now we have 6,000 gallons of storage. Once we begin to build the house, we'll add one more tank, which will give us 9,000 gallons of storage, which is approximately, I can make it a little over 2.5 months without a drop of rain falling. And storage can be added at any time. You can add as many of these tanks as you want. I can add larger tanks. Of course, you've got 68 acres out there. Space is not a problem. And that's it. Just kind of in comparison, within 3/4 of a mile from me, there are 2 houses that have natural springs, that's spring houses that they pull their water from. There is a house that has pump houses that pull out of Petey Creek. All these people built houses with Nothing was ever tested. So,
Board, do you have any questions of this request?
Yeah, I have a question. So you were talking about testing.
yes,
So is the company you're working with, if they, from Knoxville,
yes,
I'm sure they have some testing.
they do. They do.
Has been-
And you can speak to that, they just don't have on my specific system, but systems that are designed and built just like mine have
I
been tested.
saw that they had some testing, so we might want some more information about, or examples of some of the testing for this type of application.
And Dennis is here to speak about the system. You know, like I said, he's been doing it for quite some time as his company, he's the CEO of it, and they do have a lot of new systems in the area. If you were to go on their website, there's pictures of homes in Nashville that run completely off of rainwater harvesting, and pictures of homes in Lebanon and everywhere also. So, and then there's a bunch in Knoxville, North Carolina, different places.
Thank you. Cheryl Rader.
Sir, I have a question. Mr. Rainey? Yes. I have a question. All right. Oh, so if you have the storage of 9,000 gallons,
Yes.
how, does it keep a meter so you know how much you're using on
It
a daily
does,
basis?
it does. So I know how much is in there at any particular time. The system also has a shut-off where if power goes out, I cannot get any water if power goes out because the UV light that's in there will be inactive if there's no power. So it has a safety shut-off so that I cannot get bad water out of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you add in the generator?
We're gonna put a Generac, we're gonna put a Generac on the house, and so that way we will be able to keep everything up and running. And it's just because, you know, being in a remote setting like that, you know, power does go out, we're not high on the list, so we want to still be able to have power and be able to run, you know, run our filtration system. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I apologize. Cheryl Rader. Come forward, please.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Rader, and I live in Gillespie. But we are a back neighbor to, I can't pronounce your name.
Yeah.
You're not from around here, so I can tell.
I'm from around here.
And so we have heard all these stories, you know how the stories flow, and sit here listening and everything. So we don't have any questions now, but we had lots of questions before because of the in the neighborhood. So thank you so much.
And I am from here. I've been to Sumner County here. I thank you.
We're on the breeder.
Yeah, going off of Garrison.
Garrison Ranch.
No, I'm in my way.
It's a snake ranch, so you gotta be careful.
Well, dude, I've seen quite a few of my own.
Don? No. The perfect one.
Okay. Dennis.
I'm sorry, I couldn't read it. Thank you, Rick.
Dennis Roche with Perfect Water.
You want to do your presentation, see if I have any questions?
I like to flip through just a couple slides real quick.
I hate to do this. Let me ask the board if they have any specific questions. Because it's been a long agenda. Board, does anyone have any concerns about the system itself or any questions of the supplier?
I just had that one about testing. You know, I know you got something in there, but just wanted to learn a little bit more about their testing since they've been doing this.
We use state certified lab, same lab that's required by the state for very small systems. And so, it's microvac, Maryland, we're using many times a week to take samples in from both well water and rainwater harvesting systems. We take the sample in, there's a chain of custody form, everything's straight up, and then once we get the report back, we're testing for E. coli and coliform. well test. And then we attach that to documents that goes to the homeowner that they have a well with zero problem or zero leak.
Is there anything else you tested?
On the customer's request, we will. Usually we prefer to wait 90 days after the system's installed because those tests are 70, 80 parameter tests, and they'll pick up trace amounts of PVC glue and people think, you know. But after about 90 days, they are so clean. There's no water supply in the country that you can get a report on that is so clean. Right out of nature's big distillery in the sky. And then the design theories that go into a properly built water harvesting system will maintain stored rainwater, slime-free, odor-free, color-free, indefinitely. So the water's always coming in and going out, and even if they didn't go there for 6 months, it would continue to maintain high water quality stored.
Yeah, is it not lead or anything like that included in testing?
Not in our microbiological tests, the ones that the state requires for wells, if we get the 70, 80 parameter test, there's about 15 inorganics and about 55 organics, and a couple of radioactive, radon. So those kind of tests, yeah, they're very comprehensive.
Always below what you would expect out of, obviously, a well, or how's it compared to municipal?
Oh, they're tremendous because really and truly the effect of nature's distillation process, that means there can't be any inorganics, which are metals and minerals. So then you're left with organics that could be picked up, even PFAS have been found in rainwater. So it's a serious thing to understand the water treatment side of this business, which I've been in for 43 years, so we took it very seriously when we designed the system. Anything organic that could have possibly gotten in the water from a roofing material or airborne is going to come out with a carbon filter that's part of the system. It's a big, heavy-duty carbon filter. So we filter through 5 microns, 7. The state requires 10 for pre-filtration with ultraviolet light on the wells. We go 5. Then we have the carbon filter. Then we use ultraviolet disinfectant. So when we install the system under normal conditions, we will shock chlorate the house before we flip the switch. So from that point on, it's known to be potable water inside the house. We've done 140 systems, and at least 120 of them are for potable indoor use. About 80 and 90 of those are in Tennessee, and the rest are in North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Alabama.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do, I have a question, and I may say the wrong thing.
That's it.
Come on, Mike.
How does this affect, or are there studies in other states where this is more, popular? How does this affect the water table? Because this rain that would have naturally run off and then absorbed in the 70 acres, that would go to the water table or the streams or the rivers or lakes. How does this affect that?
That's a good question, and I actually saw a study one time. It was so far over my head I couldn't know if I believe it or not, but this was a commercial study done at the Trade Association, and he said it didn't prove. You tell me I don't know how, but here's what I believe about it. That 3,000 square feet, that was hard surface that would be ground absorption, as you stated. They're going to use the water, and it's going back into the ground anyway. So, cases where you're on a septic, it's going to self-solve. But I will say, as far as safeties go, there's a series of contact points that the circuit goes through. It starts at the bottom of the UV, which is built by the manufacturer, not us. And it's a safety that's built into that system. It's a dry contact, electrical. If the UV lamp burns out bam, that dry contact dies. When it dies, our normally closed, big old industrial motor valves, $500 valves, it just shuts its water off immediately. At a place where you can't even get the 7 or 8 gallons and store it in the pressure tank, that won't come into the house either. So that problem's fixed, they can't get water. So when you do a little comparison, you know, gosh, being around so many wells all my life, the real requirement is, at most places, to my knowledge, is a microbiological test at real estate transfer. So everybody on the well is able to be going from safe water to drinking water to E. coli and not having any kind of an alert system. They don't know it until they get it. Whereas we don't have an alert system, but we still have safety. We know the UV has a tremendous annihilation rate. It's been going on for years and years and years, so that's not, you know. So as long as it's burning, he's got safe water. And if it's not burning, he's got no water.
How easily repair, like, how, is it 6 weeks for a part, 2 months for a part? Do you always have parts to fix the well?
We do. And
Okay.
our first house we did was in Franklin on Old Highway 96 in 2011. That was big construction. So this is so new, and you know, it's like it's a little, it takes a minute to wrap your mind around it. But the other side of it is it's no different from grandma's old system. We just use a few components to keep it all a little cleaner and, you know, manage it better. But it's these homes, even around here, we have done so many homes in bordering counties. Maybe 150 less. But they come through code inspection after code inspection after code inspection, and they look at us for our electrical and our plumbing to meet code. Yes. And so other than that, nobody's really got anything to go by. So I kind of really want to say I appreciate you guys catching this enough to say, yeah, there's a voice out here on it, because a lot of people are calling and want the system. Really.
Any other questions? Thank you. Travis Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I think they've covered all.
William Keller?
Hi, I'm Lynn Cowan, and I live across the street from Bush Mills, where they're proposing. And originally my in-laws, Pat and Don Cowan, got the letter about whatever's going on. And so I'm sort of representing them, but I also just kind of wanted to have some general questions. I noticed that it had 293 or 493, whatever the address is, and F, because it's on an easement. Is that correct? The property is on an easement?
No, they may have an easement, but the property itself has road frontage, if you can kind of.
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out.
There's a little strip of property right there. Now, this is one of those big farm partitions that was done.
Yeah.
It's a 911 assigns those addresses, if I was A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and yeah, that's probably a shared mailbox somewhere down toward the road, I guess.
Because, well, that part where they all share the same bridge, there's like one road that goes through the entire subdivision, or whatever you want to call it, so there's not really a road, it's a gravel driveway for all the I guess, property owners on that. And I'm wondering what the law was about the easements, how many residents are supposed to be on an easement. Because if that's the case, I think it's 5, if I understand the law correctly. So I just,
Mr. Chairman, that was really not before this board.
okay,
We're here to study, whether it allows the people to use, rainwater or not. That's all that's before.
Mr. Chairman, one thing we will be glad to do, if we get Scott tomorrow, we'll be glad to talk with you about all that. But as far as we go, this does comply, Mr. Chairman, with our road access requirements. So there's no limit to the number of people that can use a private driveway.
good, that's right, that's what we were concerned about, is how many developments, that kind of thing that was going on. And I'm very interested in the water thing that they're doing, because we do not have water on that road. So we're one of those that are on well along with several other neighbors, so very interested in that. So, thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else that would care to speak to this request? Seeing no one will close the public hearing. Board, what's your wishes?
Chairman, I'd like to hear from, somebody Marshall out there. Has he got anything to add about what we saw in the system, or any concerns that he might have?
Mr. Chairman, this too is my first experience with rainwater harvesting systems. So, I didn't want to make a decision. First, the board made it, and the reason I base that off on is, the code says potable water shall be supplied to plumbing fixtures and plumbing appliances except where treated rainwater, treated rainwater, municipal reclaimed water is supplied to water closets, urinals, trap fixtures. The pump code says you can use rainwater harvesting systems for water closets, urinals, and trap fixtures. All this is new to me also. I did contact the state, Tennessee Division of Water Resources, and talked to Michael Murphy, and he stated that the state of Tennessee has no regulations or rules for rainwater harvesting systems. I'd like to submit that as an exhibit in conjunction. And I just want to lay just a little groundwork, just a couple paragraphs I like to read on the background of testing. I think Matt mentioned something about testing, concern about testing. Section 104.11, alternative materials, designs, and methods of construction and equipment for the provisions of this code are not intended to prevent the installation of any material or prohibit any design or method of construction not specifically prescribed by this code. The beneficiaries have the authority to approve an alternative material, design, or method of construction upon application of the owner or his agent. You shall first find that the proposed design is satisfactory and complies with intent, the provisions of this code, and that the material and method of work offered is for the purpose intended not less than the equivalent of the prescribed in code in quality, effectiveness, and safety. Compliance with the specific performance-based provisions of international code shall be an alternative to the specific requirements of this code. Test, it says, where there is insufficient evidence of compliance with the provision of this code or evidence that a material or method does not conform to the requirements of this code or in order to substantiate claims for alternative materials or methods, the beneficiaries have the authority to require tests as evidence of compliance to be made at no expense to the jurisdiction. Test methods shall be as specified in this code or by other recognized standards. The absence of recognized standards and accepted test method shall be approved as a testing procedure. Test shall be performed by an approved agency. Reports of such tests shall be retained by the beneficiary. If data to determine compliance is required, such data shall be in the form of test reports or engineering analysis, not simply from the sales brochure. So we have the authority to look at alternative methods, and if it meets the intent of the code, then we can approve it as a local government, and we require any test that you feel like is sufficient, and the burden of paying for that test would be on the appellant. I like to see that for reserve. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions?
No, that's all. Thank you, Mark.
Do we uphold the staff determination or override?
I just got one question. Sorry, Judge.
Turn on the mic, please,
Oh, sorry.
and talk into it.
A little bit more about how y'all came to this being determined.
But essentially, you know, what the staff, kind of like what Marshall was saying, what I said earlier, we've not been confronted with this before. And so, we deal with well water and public water lines. Those are the two things we deal with. And so, rather than going and setting a new precedent at the staff level, what we essentially did was to say, we're not going to accept this at the staff level. We're going to refer to the Board of Zoning Appeals and allow, because remember, they're training quasi-judicial body. You guys will be setting essentially a new precedent for us to be able to accept this, and so if this is, again, we'd like to overturn the staff, does not make us, doesn't hurt our feelings or anything like that, that's not the intent of it. It's just, by essentially overturning that and saying this does constitute a public water supply, this will allow other folks that want to do something similar to come and do it. We will send it to the Board of Zoning Appeals, we'll have a precedent that's set, and it'll give the staff the ability to approve these administratively. Does that make sense? I don't think.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something.
And added benefit to this, with no one's mentioned, but it also acts as capturing the first inch of rainfall off of every rain event that we have to do countywide.
Sure.
I'd like to motion to overturn staff determination.
We have a motion to overturn, is there a second?
I'll say.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries unanimously. Next. Gary W. Fisher is requesting a variance containing requirements regarding encroachment of an addition within a front yard setback at 340 Hester Road, Portland. Josh?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a 1 acre parcel on Hester Road. It's zoned rural residential. Gary W. Fisher is the property owner. Again, as you said, they're seeking a variance related to encroachment of an addition to a primary structure within a front yard setback. They're seeking variance from Chapter 4, Section 4 of the County Zoning Resolution. And one thing to note is that the existing house here has been in place since 1930, per the assessor's website. So it belonged predates the adoption of zoning in 1973. And so there is a setback issue, but it is a legitimate non-conforming setback issue, unlike some others that you might hear from time to time. The joint property owners were notified by certified mail. This item was advertised in the Gallatin News and Nashville Standard on June 29th, 2023. This is the public notice that's in the paper. This is the subject property. And so if you look on the aerial photo, this is the home. It was constructed very close to the roadway. It was very common back in the day. I think probably for a lot of folks back in 1930, this was a good ways off the road for wherever this road was back then. But modern requirements require a 40-foot front yard setback around the front of the property. And so this house is there, there's an existing shed, we've taken the aerials back as far as they go. This shed's been there a long time as well. We weren't able to confirm exactly when it was built, but it predates our aerial photography that we got in the file. And so what they're wanting to do is and I'll show the plot plan, but there's a building addition that's proposed where they're going to essentially add on to this structure in a way that's going to keep it within that setback. So they're expanding as a non-conforming use essentially. So what they did was they came to us, this is a little bit busy, they came to us a couple of times, but they proposed for a great room with a half bath addition. We looked at it and told them that it didn't meet zoning requirements. What we said was the proposed home addition will encroach into the setback, increasing the existing nonconformity, and may increase, when we looked at it initially, we thought it might actually be in the right of way where they were wanting to put it. A variance from the county board of BZA will be required, survey plot plan required. They revised the plan in a way that met requirements, so we sent them through, and then they came back and said, well, never mind, we don't want to do that, we're going to do the original plan. And so the original plan, within the setback as it was, is what they decided that they needed to do. Did I get that right, Kathy? Is that pretty much right? And so this is the plot plan that was provided by Steve Bridges, who's a surveyor in Sumner County, and I'll zero in just a little bit on it. This is the residence. As you see, this is just to help everybody understand where everything is. This is the roads are here. It's a corner lot. This is the lot line. The edge of the public right of way. So anything on this side of the right of way is essentially public property. There's a 10-foot easement right here. The house is in that easement and was in that easement when it got divided. And then this is your setbacks. You can see there's this box here is your building setback line. It's MBSL is minimum building setback line. And so you can see the home is in a setback, and the proposed addition is also in a setback. And depending on how you measure it, it may actually be a little closer to the road in some ways than what you have here. So we felt like initially, I think there was a proposal maybe move it back here somehow or another, and we were going to work with them on that because they're not increasing the level of the non-conformity, but that didn't work out for whatever reason. So this is what they've gone with right here. So this addition where it is, and we just felt like that would need a BZA variance in order to do that. So this is what they're seeking to vary from, and what they're varying from is that front setback requirement, which is 40 feet. And so their variance request, what they say, variance requested for proposed addition to the existing structure as located on survey. And so there was a subdivision plat that was recorded for this property back in 1994. And you can see, I don't know how to scale this drawing was, to be honest with you. I don't know that they put the buildings to scale. The house is smaller than it really is. It looks like sheds. There's a shed here where the one is today. And so at any rate, this is about 30 years when it was platted, and the house along the basis of the platted. And just photos here of the subject property. This is standing at the edge of the road. And so that gives you an idea about how much right of way. A lot of people don't understand that. They come in, they don't understand the extent of the public right of way. It's there. It's a lot wider than most people think it is. So you can see here how close the house is to the road. And then proposing that home addition to go right in here, I believe. So, there's 8 standards for variances in Sumner County for zoning resolution. The first needs to be is based on the characteristics of the lot, unique characteristics essentially, that would not compliance would pose a real hardship on the property owner versus an inconvenience, basically. And as we know, the house being built in 1930, they're trying to add on to the house. It's going to be difficult for them to actually connect something to this house without being in the setback one way or another. Number 2, conditions don't apply across the so this is, it can't be something that everybody else deals with in the rural residential zone. This is not. It's a unique and unusual situation. There are no unpermitted uses that are proposed. They're not requesting this for financial reasons. This isn't it's not that it's cheaper this way. I think this is what works best for them. So they've not cited that as a financial reason. That's the primary issue. The difficulty can have been created by the person who owns the lot at this time, or after the effective date of the resolution. The structure has been in place since 1930. I would assume that whoever built that structure is not involved at this time. The current owner didn't create a hardship that he's living there. Variance is the minimum variance. Other alternatives may be available that may not increase the degree of nonconformity. I don't know. There was another option that was put out there by the applicant, but it didn't work. And so the BZA may ask him what options he's explored, and is there another feasible way to accomplish this? There may not be. Can be detrimental to the public or injurious to anybody in the area. It would allow additional construction within the front yard setback, back very close to the public right of way. Again, there is an existing house and existing garage building there already. So you wouldn't be doing anything necessarily new there. And lastly, can encourage the adequate supply of light or air, increase congestion in the public streets, increase the danger of fire, danger to the public safety. Again, the encouragement would allow a structure within the front yard setback. Historically, the BZA, Mr. Chairman, as you know, has been very hesitant to grant front yard setback variances for new structures. This is an addition to an existing structure, so the board may want to look at it differently. And they have given us a plot plan as is required, and this is not a use variance. The BZA may not grant use variances. And so this is an allowed use. So, Chairman, there's a motion on the screen. Number one, to find that all the county variance standards are met, and to approve this, subject to obtaining any permits. Or number two, to find that the variance standards are not met, and to deny it. And there's a third option there, to defer if the BZA feels like they need additional information. And that concludes my presentation.
Mr. Fisher? Come forward, please, and is there anything you care to add to the report?
My name is Gary Fisher, Gary W. Fisher, 340 Esther Road in Portland, Tennessee. I want to try it again. My name is Gary Fisher, I'm at 340 Esther Road, Portland, Tennessee.
Is there anything you care to add to the report?
If you can pull the plot back up at the survey room, I can maybe give a little information on my thoughts on this addition. So the street to the left, as it comes toward us, is traveling at an angle away from the house. So the footprint on the proposed addition is not any farther more toward that road than the existing houses. And in the back, going to the left, is only going to be about 2 feet back behind that corner on the far right, outside edge of the house. So the actual size of that room, proposed room, will be 14 by 37 or less. Keeping the magic 500 square foot boundary in mind, that calculation will be, I think, 476 square feet. So I would really be interested in keeping the additional room going toward the street for the roof structure. Reason being, I'm trying to incorporate a tray ceiling to go in that room. So if I can get that additional 3 or 4 feet, with the pitch of the roof being what it is, that will allow that tray ceiling to go in there. Other than that, it's pretty simple. Nothing fancy or extraordinary about it. That's all I have to add, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions of Mr. Fisher? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I drive by this house every time there's a train across my road. It's about opposite way out, and the house is out on the ground. I see what he's trying to line up in front of the porch and the roof. I don't see that we would be, if you go by after it's completed, unless he changes his setting, or he doesn't know it's that way. Discussion, a motion.
I have questions. I'm not as familiar with Portland as I am with Hendersonville. How likely is it that Hester Road would ever be widened?
That's a good question. I think probably Hester Road is probably like an 18, 19 foot wide roadway. But one thing about it is that it should happen and need to be widened. And yeah, there we go. We'll look at Mr. Reed's.
19 foot wide.
19, yeah. And so, Hester Road, there's adequate room to widen it within. That's a great question because the county needed to do something to get additional right of way. And you're talking about buying and something that's just been built or something. I believe Hester Road through here, because this is a platted subdivision, has the standard amount of right of way that's available. So any widening that needs to be done can be done within the right of way. So you wouldn't have to go in and take additional property and maybe take this out or anything like that.
That's a great question. Ready to make a motion?
I gotta say, I was saying, go back to the plot plans. So is this addition, have we confirmed that this is gonna make it, he's not in the setback now, it's gonna make it a lot worse. I mean, it looks like to me, not very much difference here, is it? So the setback is already encountered from 1930s, it's about the same for this addition.
It appears to me that what he said is correct. The road is sort of moving away from the house a little bit. So I don't see this
Basically,
as any worse than what's there now.
all right, I'll make a motion to approve it on, example motion number 1, just like he's got it.
I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve and say that these county standards have been met with this request. We have a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, like sign, motion carries unanimously. Sumner County staff is requesting an interpretation of the zoning resolution as it pertains to a tiny home owned by Bruce Timberbank, 161 Honeysuckle Drive,
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request that was submitted to the county staff by the county staff to the BCA. What we're wanting to know is number one, get it on the record from the property owner about what the plans are for this tiny home that's here. I'll clarify that just a little bit here in a minute, and guidance from the BCA on whether this thing, whether it can remain as it is. And with regard to that, should this be considered a second dwelling, or is it considered to be part of an unpermitted business activity that's going on site? Because there's a tiny home that's being constructed on this property. Nobody's planning to live in for the property owner, but it's the second house that's on the lot, so lots of unusual situations here at this meeting tonight, but, this item was cited as an illegal dwelling by the building codes office. They sent the property owner a letter a while back. The applicant in due course did come out to the county planning office as well, and he filled out his own compliance form and met with the planning director and staff planner, Kathy Young, on June 15th. When we met with the property owner, we just didn't feel like we had a really good understanding of what the plans for this property were, what was going on, and what the plans were for the structure. And so, the meeting wasn't necessarily fruitful in that regard, so, we let the property owner know that we were going to refer this to the board of zoning appeals to have explained to the BZA, and hopefully get some guidance from the BZA on what we need to do. So this property contains half an acre, 0.5 acres, is zoned rural residential. Property owner is notified by certified mail, and it was advertised in the Gallatin News and the Andersonville Standard as well, on June 29, 2023. This is the subject property here. As you can see, it's a smaller subdivision lot, located off the Long Haul Pike. Here it is in its context. You see it's in a relatively built-up area. This is the Victoria Place subdivision here. This is the Laurel Park on the Westbrook property, and then a little bit further that way you have the Coleman Presbyterian Church. And I forget the name of the subdivision. I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but this is a built-up subdivision here. It's been there for a while. This is what we noticed in place in the newspaper. And this is the zoning compliance application. What the property owner said in his zoning compliance request was he's working on rebuilding a trailer into a tiny house, not to be a permanent dwelling. And so the staff got with him, and it felt like additional information was needed here on the form, and check that box. He did schedule a meeting with us. There's some additional information that he provided to us here. A little bit hard to read up on the screen, but he kind of discussed the dimensions of it and that kind of thing. It's 8 foot 6 inches wide, 36 feet long, 10 feet 4 inches high, 2 axles, 1 with brakes. The tongue of the RV trailer is intact and it can be moved, but it owns temporary blocks under the frame to keep it level while he's doing remodeling work. The RV will not have a permanent structure to keep it in place. I think that's a permanent foundation. He says nobody lives in the project. Statement from the owner, Bruce Campbell, when the project is finished, nobody will be staying in it, nobody will be renting it in place. However, I might sell it when it's finished. And so that's a little bit unusual. We've not quite encountered that before. And so that's why I said the board of appeals. This is the home, and this is the structure in question here. This is the tiny home in question that's been built out on this trailer. And so, Mr. Chairman, there's example motions on the screen. We're asking the BZA to make a finding here whether this meets county requirements for issuance of a building permit, and the tiny home should remain, or should be allowed to remain, or that it doesn't meet requirements for issuance of a building permit, and that the tiny home being constructed must be removed no later than a specified date. We probably have, if the board felt like this was something that needed to be removed from the site at the specified date, and that needs to happen. That concludes my presentation.
Mr. James, come talk, please.
Yes, sir.
Bruce Campbell, 161, Bruce Campbell, 161 Honeysuckle Drive, Hendersonville.
What's your intention?
It started out as a project, something to build, have fun, like just a hobby, kind of put something together. And I've had a lot of people interested in wanting to purchase it from me after I get it done.
So your purpose was not to live in or move anybody into. I can see the staff's purpose in wanting a permit for inspections, because we things don't come in and people have asked for approval of those. They've never got an inspection, and it created all sorts of waiting for the back. So I can certainly appreciate the staff's position on the permit. I can see your position on the building itself. You never think that.
I think everything was covered pretty well.
So is there anyone else that still is a public hearing? Anyone else here to speak to this request? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Question from the board. A motion from the board.
Well, just a point of discussion, so I'm trying to wrap my mind around this, it's kind of easy to. It's almost like, it looks just like a mobile home, somebody building out there, right? I mean, it's on the road, which is our definition of mobile home. One. The mobile homes are prefabricated, not built on site. This is being built on site. But it's second home, well, I guess that's the biggest difference here. I'm looking at it, it's being built, manufactured on the site. But it's second home, it's not allowed. So, did I miss something yet?
No, sure, I think that you kind of nailed staff's conundrum right there, where it's a second home on the lot. So if somebody brought in, on my lot, I brought in a mobile home, I would have to get an accessory building unit permit, building board zoning field, whatever. So there's that element, but there's also like a manufacturing element as well, where this is in a subdivision on a half-acre lot where somebody's essentially manufacturing homes that they're gonna sell. That's certainly not allowed in a residential zone, and so I don't think PCA can approve the manufacture of homes like that, tiny homes on a residential lot either. And so that was, but yet there is no intention of anybody living in the thing. And so, but eventually somebody's, at least on site, but somebody's gonna buy it, and if they take it and try to install it somewhere in Sumner County, there's gonna be a CO issue for the thing, and a building permit inspections that are gonna have to be done, and that's what Mr. Rainey was alluding to. So there's all kinds of problems in the future that are gonna accrue to this thing, basically, is what we're kind of concerned with. Beyond the fact that it is an illegal second dwelling on a lot.
Mr. Denton, I have a question. How long will it take you to complete your copy?
I think I can have it done by the end of the year.
I didn't catch all your questions, so what was your question, Mr. Manning? See, I heard him say we get it done by the end of the year.
Mr. Rainey asked me how long it would take him to complete his hobby project for this, and then the property owner replied it would take, he would have it done by the end of the year. So, January of 2024, I believe. Is that correct?
Do you have a location that you can move your copy to get it completed?
Yeah, I can move it, up to my parents' farm area if I had to.
Well, unless we want to defer it, I mean, I don't see where we have any other choices to find that, it doesn't meet the county requirements right now, that's for sure. I mean, the way I look at it, now we can defer it and give time to, I guess, do
Yes, sir,
Oh,
if you, the, number two there, what that's essentially saying, at least the way I read it is, to say this doesn't meet our requirements, and he's got to have it on by X date. If you guys want to set a date, my one question for the property owner is the parents' farm, is that in Sumner County? Okay. I meant that in good faith, that if a permit will be required to put it there, so.
Well, if they have 200 acres, you can have multiple homes on, a home every 20 acres, and I remember
You still got to get a permit.
you said you could have two for a agricultural building, even for a farm. I heard that 2 hours ago.
Okay.
Is it?
I have a question. Where's your parents' farm?
It's in Putnam County,
Cookville.
Silver Point.
I would propose 30 days to move it to your parents' farm. 30 days.
So, are you making a motion?
I will make a motion that it must be removed no later than, don't mean to count, September 1st. That's more than 30 days. It's July, August, 6 weeks. September 1st. I don't know if it's a Sunday, just a date.
Can you get it moved in 30 days, or actually 6 weeks? Is there a second?
I'll say,
We have a motion and a second to find that the request does not meet county standards, and that it is to be removed from the property by September 1st, 2023. Is that correct? All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
And just confirm, you agree that have it on by September 1st? Yes. Yes, sir.
At this point, I've got to turn this over to Vice Chairman, as I have a conflict of attention.
The next item on the agenda is Charles Berry requesting a variance. Sumner County zoning resolution related to easement access. Josh?
Thank you, Vice Chairman. This is Madam Chairman, this is a request for variance related to required easement access for a piece of property containing 5.69 acres on the Gil Hodges Road, or at least accessing Gil Hodges Road. The property is a tract that was apparently separated by deed many years ago. What this variance will allow is allow this property owner who has been deeded this 5 acres from his parents to utilize an ingress and egress easement that serves multiple tracts in order to obtain a building permit to place a single-family home on this particular lot. It would allow variance from requirements contained in Chapter 11, Section 1101, subsection H, related to road access for new structures. It's rural residential, was the joint property owner was notified by certified mail, and was advertised in the Gallatin News and Interstate Standard on June 29th. This is the newspaper notice. This is the subject property. And so, I'll get off in the weeds if I'm not careful, but the county property assessor's office allows folks to combine multiple tracts for tax purposes. And so this is one very large tract right here. that contains a number of tracks in reality per the deed. This is one of them right up in here, it's a 5 acre tract, that's been deeded, as I said, from one group of folks to another person who is their son. Here, track 3, if you zoom in on the map, it shows you some of those parcels. We got a zoning compliance form on this, requesting to build a modular home, so a double wide home on this piece of property. And we looked at the access that was in the deed, it took a lot of parse this one out, but we noted that the easement does not appear to be county requirements since it serves multiple tracts. And those are all under the same ownership at this time, but they may not be under the same ownership forever. And so we adhere to the letter of the law as much as we can. And so I'll talk about what the zoning code says about easement access and tracks and that kind of thing. In addition, the previous deed stated that this was not a buildable lot. For whatever reason, it was unclear there to the surveyor. I think the status of this particular piece of property had never, one of those weird pieces of property that apparently had never been conveyed in a clear way. And so the surveyor put some caveat language in there. I think they've since rectified that by formally deeding this property to this young man. But we did let him know he needed to apply for a variance from the county board of zoning appeals for the easement itself. And this is their variance request. They did provide us with a letter here, and I won't read it all, but what he's saying is, if the variance is granted, they'll have to construct a driveway approximately 1,000 feet to his house that will require a lot of maintenance and that kind of thing. I believe he has to agree to comply with any county requirements. The existing driveway off the Gilhotty Road is probably what he'll end up using, but he couldn't find a recorded easement for it. But apparently it is a prescriptive easement. Some of that's kind of outside of our bailiwick. At any rate, Mr. Rainey put together a survey for him, which was the reason for his recusal. And so, again, the subject property is right in here. And you can see this tract, there's multiple tracts that are under a single ownership, I believe. And so, and then here's the property, the subject property with other access as the Gilhotty Road. So there are multiple ways in and out of this property. So the letter of the law that I was talking about that we have to provide, that we have to try to adhere to at the staff level, is found here. Easements shall not be used to provide access to more than one lot or tract of land having been separated by deed from another property. And so our concern with it was that, as I said, it's crossing a whole bunch of tracts of property. They're all under the same ownership, but the letter of the law says that it can't cross more than one. And so it did adhere to that, but looked at it another way, it's crossing one big piece of property owned by his parents. And so if they just recorded a quick claim combining all those lots, then this would be a non-issue and we would approve the permit, I believe. And then this is that wording that Mr. Graves, when he surveyed this property, put in here saying that this was not a approved building site as it was. And so like I said, they have since deeded off that property and got it in its own deed at this point. So the grounds for the variances, again, there are 8 of them. This variance needs to be based on unique characteristics of the property. Our interpretation on it is limitations of the lot's existing access make it difficult. Conditions don't apply generally, no unpermitted uses. They're not necessarily posing a financial consideration here or anything. This is more of a technicality, to be honest with you, than anything. Wasn't created by the current owner. Property was like this when they bought it. This doesn't appear to be the minimum that will allow the site to be good to have a home built on it. We received no evidence that there would be any public welfare injuries or congestion or anything. There's no issues like that with this particular application. They have provided a plot plan showing the entire property, and it's not a use variance. So staff went out and did some photographs of the subject property. This is where Gilhotty Road, I believe, ends right here, and there's a driveway that they intend to use. So it's, Madam Chairman, the example motions are on the screen there. I'm going to want to find that the county variance standards are met to approve this, subject to them obtaining any permits that they need from the county, And number two, finding that the variance requirements are not met. And so that concludes our presentation.
Is the owner here?
There's several folks. I don't know if anybody
They're all
else.
our neighbors and they left.
Okay.
When they got the certified letter, they thought that if they had to come.
Oh.
So,
Do you have anything to add to what Josh said?
the only reason that there are multiple properties.
I'm sorry, can you just introduce yourself?
The only reason that there are multiple properties,
Name and address.
Cecilia Baker,
Sorry.
1530, Dublin Hall. We bought this farm at auction, and Mr. Graves did divide it up into different lots. You had an option at the end to buy the whole farm, which we did. When we went to build our house, we had to get a construction loan. Wilson Bank and Trust didn't want the whole 86 acres. They wanted us to be ourselves, 5 acres. So that's why as far as I know, our 5 acres and his 5 acres are the only places that the farm's divided, because we grouped it back together. This is our only child, so it's not like it's gonna cause a problem down in the family, and all of our neighbors are in our support, so.
Any questions for them from the board?
I just have, I guess, we have this person sign up to speak, Charles Mayer.
Okay, so my name is Charles Baird, I also live at 1530 Buckingham Road. The only real things I have to add to this is, I spoke to Mr. Chris Ellison, who was here earlier. He owns part of that existing driveway that we'll be using to access it, and we started the process of trying to get something more formal than easement as opposed to just restricted. I have tried to find a way to contact Henry Bryson Lane, who owns a tract in between me and Mr. Chris, who also has use of that driveway. Unfortunately, he bought that property in the 70s. He lives in Naples, Florida, and as far as we're aware, nobody has seen him since 1970s. So we're trying to gain access to him, but we are able to prove that that driveway has been used by our property since 1984, so we feel there's a strong case for prescriptive if you were to ever try to stop us.
Any questions?
Madam Chairman, just for form sake, we did have 2 other folks that signed up to speak, and I just agreed their name. Amy Hall, that's right, and Mary Fisher signed up to speak, but they both live. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to close the public hearing. What's the will of the board?
Find that the county variance standards are met, approve the request for example motion number 1.
Motion,
Motion approved and second.
Second.
all in favor say aye.
Motion carries. Is there anything else?
Oh, man, that's it.
Could I have a motion to dismiss?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Let's go home. She's gonna be here the whole week. Once back there. Surprise. I'm telling you, I'm brain dead. I'm just,